Good morning, everybody. Dear members of the European Commission, dear policymakers, scientists, and IAS managers from all European member states, and dear colleagues. In 2001, the IUCN issued the clear statement that invasive alien species, after direct habitat destruction, pose the greatest threat to our native biodiversity. Since then, policymakers and site managers, supported by scientists, have taken actions to tackle them. These actions were mostly local, temporary, and based on trial and error. These actors felt respected and supported when the European Commission issued a clear signal in 2015, a new European regulation on the management of invasive alien species. How have member states dealt with the implementation and the execution of this regulation? On which species or pathways do they focus? How are they organized and what are their findings? Let's discover it together today. On behalf of Brussels Environment, I wish you a warm welcome to our building. I wish to thank the organizers of this event, Sonja and Tim. Sonja and Tim. And I wish you all an interesting and inspiring conference. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all there. Just a few words to welcome you from my side. So welcome to this day. We're going to have a great day all together. I just wanted to present you the staff, let's say. This is a joint collaboration between the Belgian Forum on Invasive Species and the Rapid Life project. So we have two members of the Rapid Life, Rebecca and Alicia. And so the Belgian Forum on Invasive Species is facilitated by myself, and we have a lot of colleagues, so it's actually a community of practice. So a lot of scientists, managers, policymakers who all deal with invasive species. And two of the main contributors are Tim Adriaan from INBO and Etienne Brancard from the Walloon region, Demna. So we wish you all a very nice day. I will start with a few practical information for the day. So the day will be organized in two big parts. The first morning will be dedicated to the how the member states are implementing the EU regulation, their interpretation of the regulation. So it's going to be member states oriented, while in the afternoon it's going to be more focusing on management, with first a keynote speaker of Andy Shepherd, who is sitting right there. Thanks a lot already, Andy. And then a set of talks of live projects from all over Europe that will present you what's being done currently in IAS management in Europe. Let's have a look at what I still have. Yeah, you will be filmed throughout the day, so if you don't want to be filmed, just keep away from the camera. That's the easiest way to do it. Unless you really have a problem, just get in touch with maybe with you to let them know that you don't want to be filmed. We have a Twitter hashtag if you want to tweet about the event. It's written there on the corner, hashtag #ManageIAS Brussels. So help us in making this event known. And also you have the Wi-Fi accessible, and it's written on the pillar and there. Hi, Peter. What else? Sorry, yeah, the headphones. Are there still people who need some headsets? If you still need them, just raise your hand. Colleagues of us will bring you. Do you need headsets? No one? Yeah, a few one there. Yeah. Yes. Tell people how they work. Yeah, I will. So how do those headsets work? Quite easy. You have to plug it in. As soon as it's plugged, you have a button on the right, I think, to choose the language. It seems to be easy. I haven't tested myself, but it should be easy. There is another one there. Yeah, I think. Ah, yes, and very important, you have to bring them back. Don't get back home with the headset. Thanks a lot. So, well, I wish you a very nice day, and I invite already the first speakers, Janne Reniers, who will present us with Dido Gus, her colleague. They are both working for the Belgian Scientific Secretariat on Invasive Alien Species, and they will present us the point of view of Belgium. So, thanks a lot.
Do we have a pointer or something? Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jana from the National Scientific Secretariat on Invasive Alien Species from Belgium, and I'll be talking about the Belgian experiences with the implementation of the European regulation. So quick overview of the presentation. So I'm going to talk a bit about the situation before the regulation entered into force. Then I'll be talking about the implementation itself, highlighting a few articles and some other initiatives. And then at the end, I'll talk about some conclusions, a bit of evaluation. So before we dive into this, I need to explain a bit the political reality in Belgium, because of course political reality is linked to policy reality. As we all know, when you want to tackle invasive alien species, you need actions at many fronts, so in many themes. And the competences for these themes are divided between a federal level and the regions. I listed the competences there. And then we also have 3 regions in Belgium. So the Brussels Capital Region, Flanders and Wallonia. And this means, because they have these shared competences, that the policy in one region might differ from the policy in another region. So you can already see that it's not a very easy topic to be coordinated. So you actually might expect that before this regulation on invasive alien species, there was nothing happening in Belgium. But of course, this is not entirely the case. It's a fair judgment when you're talking about policy coordination, but we were thinking about invasive alien species, and not just thinking about them, but we were actually doing things. So there were some support tools to inform EAS policy. There were legal instruments and dedicated projects on invasive alien species. So for example, the information system, so it's Harmonia, and it's actually based on scientific expertise. So on scientific knowledge on the species, and based on their ecological impact, these species are divided in a few lists, so a blacklist, a watch list, and an alert list. Then there was also some, early warning initiative. I show here the website from waarnemingen.be, but there's also observation.be. And this is actually a citizen science-based project. So it's also a coordination between NGO and governmental institute. And in this system, volunteers or citizens can upload their reportings, their observations, they get validated. And this system is actually still used for the early warning and eradication responses, but also for management of certain species. And then lastly, we come at the risk assessment protocol. So it's a risk screening tool for potentially invasive plants and animals, taking into account more than just their ecological impact. There were also some legal instruments on the way. So for example, there was a draft royal decree on the prohibition of importation of certain species, but this was put on hold because of the regulation developing. And in the regional legislation, there were already some prohibitions concerning the intentional introduction of species in nature. Then I come with to the projects on invasive alien species. So there was Alterias, Invexo, and RINS. And so Alterias was actually more of a stakeholder engagement project. So it did some awareness raising in the sector of the horticulture, also trying to engage them, so giving them some alternatives for the species they're actually selling, giving them some tips. And the other two projects are more about management, about cross-border cooperation. So, for example, Invexo with the Netherlands and Belgium on a set of selected species, and then RINS with a broader international community. And then came the European regulation. Okay, how did we go about this? Because I already told you that that in Belgium we have these shared competences and also a bit of scattered competences. So it became clear with the entry into force of this regulation that there was a need for more coordination, not only concerning management objectives or management measures, but also for the reporting to the European Union and for the establishment potentially of a national list on invasive alien species. And to ensure this coordination, there was a cooperation agreement that was signed between the competent authorities. So this Belgian cooperation agreement, it actually gives rise to 3 new structures, one of which is the National Scientific Secretariat on Invasive Alien Species, for which Dido and I work. Then there's a National Scientific Council on Invasive Alien Species, which consists of scientists from governmental bodies, but also NGOs. And then there's a National Committee on Invasive Alien Species, and it consists of representatives of the competent authorities. So, okay, these 3 structures, they're there, but how do they work? So I have a small diagram here, and I'll try to walk you through the process with a clear example being the listing process of species on the list. So imagine there is a general, they want to add species to the list. So then the National Scientific Secretariat prepares the scientific information for this. For example, we fill out a template that we made specifically for the Belgium situation. This then gets sent on to the National Scientific Council. They check it, they add on it. And then this goes to the National Committee, where there is a discussion and a position on the listing is determined. And then, of course, or is proposed, and then it goes to ministers where the eventual decision is made. And of course, there's also some stakeholder consultation within that whole process. Okay, so that's a bit of the background and how general national decisions are being prepared and taken. Now I come to the second bulk of the presentation, which is the implementation of the regulation, exemplified by some specific articles. So I'll start with action plans on the pathways of introduction and spread of invasive alien species. I'm not going to go too deep into the methods that we used. The report is available, it is online, so if you want it, you can download it. Just give me a shout afterwards. So for this prioritization of pathways, we basically did 3 things. So we determined which species were, or which pathways were being used by which species. So we made a pathway inventory. Then we determined the frequency of these species along these pathways, and we determined the species impact for Belgium. And these 3 things taken together, they were, put into a formula, and then 1 score came out. And the summation of these scores across the pathways gave us a ranking of pathways of introduction and spread. Then, of course, okay, we have these pathways. This is the report, by the way, so if you want it, you can download it. So, okay, we have these pathways, we have this ranking, but now we need to make some action plans. And we started doing this by looking for thematic groups that made sense to tackle them together, stakeholder-wise, but also a bit species-wise, of course. And so we are working with the first, well, with the pathways you see here on the graph. Of course, there were more pathways, but I cut the graph because otherwise it's a horrific graph. So we chose for an action plan for species in private and public possession. We went with an action plan on recreational and commercial use of fresh water and an action plan for soil movement. And we also checked if these routes actually covered all the species groups to make sure that if other groups are added to the species list, that these plans would still be a bit robust. Okay, so this has already been signed off by ministers. This is the action plan, or these are the action plans that Belgium is gonna make. But how do you go about setting up these action plans? Well, what we did is the Secretariat actually went to the competent authorities that are implied in these action plans. So for example, if we have the action plan on private and public possession of species, you can imagine for pet species, animal welfare department is implied. So we went to the departments of the 3 different regions, and when federal was implied, we also met up with them. And why did we do that? To understand their reality in the field, but also their policy they have, their priorities. From that, we extracted some actions we could do. They were talked about in the national committee. They were stakeholders and sectors, of course, were identified. And then we checked, okay, how feasible is it to implement these different actions? And that's the document we have now. And now we're filling these actions with concrete plans to reach our objectives for our action plans. So now I'm saying, okay, we are filling these action plans with more specific projects, but of course this takes a lot of time because this means that administrations from different regions, animal welfare, but also the environmental departments, for example, need to sit together. There needs to be a coordination, so it's not a very quick and easy process. Okay, that's that for Article 13. Then we come to the official controls. So for the official controls, of course, you need to know who's doing what will be the workflow a little bit. So to this end, there was a trilateral protocol that has been signed by or between the parties, border control for sanitary control, so animal and plant health, and the Directorate General for the Environment for the prosecution of infractions. There have been live trainings of inspectors for species identification, and the Secretariat produced a booklet on species identification and a bit of more information, which is out now. We have it here, so if you want it, just come find us after this talk. Management measures. This is a big bulk of work, so I'll try to go through it, not too fast, but of course I only have 20 minutes. So the first thing that we were trying to do was determine, okay, which species should we prioritize and which management goals should we have for the species. But then the second thing is also, how can we ensure that practitioners in the field are supportive of these goals and that these goals are actually implementable in the field, that they are, that we can realize them. So for this, we actually did a risk management because it allows us to provide a very structured evaluation of management options. So for example, there is an assessment of the feasibility because of practical and resource and ethical or legal constraints. This might sound a bit out there, but it's following a project, a protocol by Bouy et al. So what did we actually do? For every species on the list, we made a scenario based on the current invasion in Belgium, the current reality in Belgium. And if the species was absent in Belgium, we made a plausible or very plausible scenario, how it would come in to Belgium. And then, according to the scenario we had, we gave 2 management options, an eradication option and a spread limitation option. And that spread limitation option was actually based on how the species was distributed throughout Belgium. And it basically goes from, okay, containing the species only on a few spots to the graph down where you are actually only trying to keep it out of a few areas. So, okay, there was a scenario, the strategies eradication or spread limitation. And then, of course, these strategies needed to be scored somehow. And they were scored on their effectiveness, if they were practical or not, the costs of these strategies, if they were acceptable by the general public, think of animal welfare reasons, if there would be negative effects with these management strategies, the window of opportunity you have to implement them, and then the likelihood these species would be again reintroduced, for example, through natural dispersal or through other pathways. So these questions on the scoring, so the effectiveness window of opportunity, this was done by experts in an online tool. And in the end, there were 32 experts that were involved in this exercise. And this led to, to the two strategies having a certain score. But okay, then you have your scoring, but you still don't know, or you're not ensured that these strategies are actually supported in the field by managers. So what we did afterwards with this document was we held a workshop with practitioners, a workshop with managers in the field, and we collected their comments, incorporated their comments, and the next step is now to go to the National Committee on Invasive Alien Species. This report is out, it's downloadable through that URL. In the beginning, in the outline, I said, okay, I will talk about some considerations, and I'll do that at the end, but of course, because this management assessment was such a huge piece of work, I already want to talk to or go through some of the issues. So we involved all people in the decision-making process for what we will do with these species, being methods, but also the strategies. It was difficult to mobilize a lot of experts, 32, as I mentioned, because there was, of course, also no budget for this. So this was done on a voluntary base. And for the moment, it already has been 3 years of work, and now there is also still the decision process. It just takes a lot of time. So we don't really know how sustainable this whole process will be for future or in the future as more and more species are added. This one I will skip. I don't know what happened. I took them out, but apparently they still got uploaded anyway. So, okay, implementation, other initiatives very quickly to provide information to the general public, but also to the sectors. A national website was made where all the information can be found. And we are producing an awareness-raising poster. It's not done yet, but I already wanted to show you some preliminary layouts. Okay, lastly, last 2 slides, I promise. I'll talk about some considerations about this whole process. So Belgium actually was not in the dark in the beginning when the regulation came, but Belgium was prepared knowledge-wise, not as much on coordination. So there were information systems, there were those risk assessment mechanisms, there were already data flows that were established for getting information for distribution maps, for example. There was already some practical experience in projects, some cross-border cooperation, and already that strong community of practice. I think of the Belgium Forum on Invasive Alien Species. Due to the European regulation, there was the creation of the scientific secretariat, and there was the signing of a cooperation agreement ensuring more coordination between the competent authorities. We are drafting, or we have drafted the priority pathways and are now drafting action plans, which is a time-consuming process. Same for the management objectives. And we try to involve stakeholders from the very beginning. Due to the regulation, there were also already some legal changes to be able to implement it. Think of the federal legislation, the adaptations to the nature decree, same in Flanders, Wallonia, and Brussels. And management-wise, maybe important to realize that there were adaptations to improve the access to private property, because this is very important for management. Some observations on this whole project. So Belgium has a lot of tools, but for these species on the list for the moment, they're not extensively used. There need to be improvements on data systems and data flow. Think of the interceptions of the inspections, but also think of surveillance. Action plans, timely process. I keep on mentioning this, but it's really true. Then management programs, it's a very time-consuming business, but also it asks a lot of scientific expertise, and it asks a lot of the experts that you put on this project. In management, there are animal welfare issues. I think every one of you that is dealing with management of these species has already encountered these. Just think of, in Belgium, the example of yesterday in Ghent, where animals were culled. There is, of course, which is logical, a lot of focus on the invasive alien species of the list of union concern, which to date are 66. So, and the other ones tend to go to the background a little bit. In general, there is a low awareness in the general public on invasive alien species. Having a secretariat is fine. We can coordinate a lot of things, we do a lot, but of course, this regulation also means workload is still going up for everyone, even though if you have a coordination body or not. Like I said, it's knowledge intensive, there are a lot of scientific needs, there's a lot of meetings and consultations, so again, and I end with this, it's a very time-consuming process. Thank you.
So at the end of the morning, we will have a group discussion. So for general question, keep your question for that specific moment. But if you have more questions related to the presentation that Janne has just given, just raise your hands. There are 2 microphones that are turning. And thanks a lot, Janne and Dido, for this presentation.
Specific question on Branta canadensis. Some years ago, I went on a very good trip in Flanders where I think it was the rinse project killed them. And the next Christmas time, I was in the market in Ghent, I think it was, and brought home very good pate made from Branta canadensis. In the pond at the bottom of my garden, the lake at the bottom of my garden, Branta canadensis is increasing in Brussels geometrically. Why can you not get a better information flow from Flanders to Brussels to control Branta canadensis and also the Egyptian goose?
So there's a few things with this. So as the National Scientific Secretariat, we're implementing the European regulation, and of course Branta canadensis is not part of the species of union concern. But of course, even if there is a good information flow, you still need the time, the money, and the manpower to do the cullings, and yeah, sometimes priorities between Flanders or Brussels or Wallonia or can be different, of course. But I don't know if I'm the perfect person to answer this question, as I'm only dealing with species of the union list, but I'm sure there are colleagues here that are more involved in this process, which you can talk to afterwards, or or at lunchtime.
You showed us some of the scoring for the invasive species. Are the scoring weighted equally, or are some more important than others?
Yeah. I wanted to just go back. So you are talking about the management exercise and the scoring of efficiency and how that's
Yeah, that's correct.
So, sorry, huh? So here you mean?
Yes.
From what I understood, I think effectiveness, practicality, and costs are all weighed the same, but then of course there is, if a species cannot establish in Belgium, the impact of the species will be downplayed. But for the rest, they're weighed the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you want more information on that, it's based on the UK assessment protocol. Yeah, by Boy et al.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jana. Now it's the next presentation will be given by Alexia, who kindly agreed to provide the presentation for the UK. Maybe you will briefly explain the reason why or how it happened. Thanks a lot, Alexia.
Hello. Ooh, that's loud. My name's Alexia Fish, so I work for the Animal and Plant Health Agency, and I actually project manage the Rapid Life project, but I'm also covering this presentation today because Finn Eaton, who was going to present it, who's from DEFRA, was unable to attend. So 2 presentations for me, very lucky. So just also DEFRA is the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the UK. So the talk is going to be on the implementation of the IS regulation in the UK. So Finn, who was going to do this talk, he's a DEFRA official who's been working on this for the past 2 years. I'm afraid I'm not as experienced or as senior. I only saw these slides in detail yesterday for the first time, so I'm afraid I will not be taking any questions. And I'm going to be reading quite a lot from notes, so I'm sorry if it's a bit, not very exciting. So, where's the thing here? Right. So this talk's going to cover a number of points. So it's going to cover a little on, when you look at devolution and implementation, cover a little bit on how the regulation is actually being implemented across the whole of the UK. And then the IAS, or sort of Invasive Alien Species Enforcement and Permitting Order 2019, super catchy. That's the main work that Finn's team's been working on, and it applies primarily to England and Wales. So you'll notice when I'm doing the talk, there's a bit of a mix of things that are either England-focused or Welsh-focused or all of the UK. We're going to talk a bit about licensing as well, looking at possibly novel approaches to management. We'll also touch on a number of articles from the regulation, which might be interesting for other member states to see. We'll talk about pathway action plans and how we fulfilled the requirements of Article 13 of the regulation, contingency plans and direct action, so further information on planning and sort of good work that's been carried out in the UK. And then in terms of communication strategy, sort of how we're taking the regulation to the general public and making people aware of IAS in general in the UK. And finally, we're going to have a short slide on retaining the regulation in UK law. So this is only kind of a whistle-stop tour of implementation, so please send any queries or thoughts or suggestions to the email address for Finn, which I'm going to provide at the end of the presentation. Right. So, a little bit complicated, not dissimilar to Belgium. There's 4 different legislatures across the UK, each with a different range of powers. So we have the UK Parliament, the Scottish Parliament, the National Assembly for Wales, and the Northern Ireland Assembly. So to fulfil the requirements of the regulation, England and Wales have put into place the Invasive Alien Species Enforcement and Permitting Order 2019. I'm just going to call it IAS order because it's too long. It's a joint piece of legislation that covers both England and Wales, as well as activities at the border, like import. So border activities are not devolved in competency. So Northern Ireland are putting in place their own legislation to implement the regulation. Next page of notes. This situation just means that all 4 legislatures have had to work together to put in place legislation that works in synergy. We've endeavoured to ensure that the UK's approach to the regulation is joined up and considers a wider strategy. So moving on to talk a little bit about the IAS order for England and Wales itself. So we have a legal obligation under the EU regulation to introduce an enforcement scheme regime for infringements of its provisions. So our new order contains enforcement, licensing, and permitting provisions to meet this obligation. We've also created a licensing regime that has proved vital in regulating various parts of the regulation, so I'll come back to that point in a few slides. This IAS order, which was laid on the 8th of March, I think, came into force on the 1st of December 2019 and implements the requirements in the EU regulation in England and Wales. So, and again, similar legislation is being prepared in Northern Ireland and Scotland, as well as Gibraltar, randomly. Right, next slide. So the order kind of provides enforcement provisions setting out the offences and penalties, and we're really pleased to actually have criminal sanctions to back up the civil sanctions, which gives regulators another opportunity to enforce the most serious breaches. So this combined approach kind of allows for a range of responses. So that can be like warning letters or stop notices for very minor breaches to all the way up to £250,000 fines or even prison sentences for repeated offences of extreme breaches. So it's been designed not only to penalise those who have damaged the environment, but also to prevent environmental damage. So the order ensures that the EU regulation is effectively enforced at the UK border. It makes provisions for live specimens of invasive species to be seized at the UK border by border officials. There are arrangements in place for detailed consignments to be passed on to the Animal and Plant Health Agency, who's the one that I work for, who will arrange for the specimens to be handled appropriately. So it also makes provisions for Article 8 permits to allow for ex situ conservation, research, and the advancement of human health. It also puts in place a licensing regime. So what about the licensing? Why is it needed? I didn't know this. I found this out yesterday. So during the writing of the IS order, we had to look at a number of articles in the regulation that were kind of less clear-cut in terms of implementation than, for example, permitting. So some particular examples include Article 17 with rapid eradication, Article 19 with management measures, and Article 31 with transitional arrangements for non-commercial owners. So some of the actions that we as a member state would want to carry out, although they're permissible under the article, needed some kind of framework to put it in place to actually make it function legally. So, for example, Article 17 allows for eradication actions to take place. Great. However, in some cases, the most effective eradication needs to breach a provision of the regulation. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this issue as well. So by kind of further example, imagine a situation where Asian hornets have been identified and we want to use tagging or line of sight after capture to kind of home in on a nest. So to do this, we'd need to capture and release an Asian hornet and see where it goes. So here comes the dilemma. The regulation states that we must eradicate effectively, and releasing a hornet and following it home is the most effective method of finding the whole nest and eradicating the whole incursion. To do otherwise would cause risk further spread. But the crutch of the dilemma is if we release the hornet, which is a listed IAS, then we're committing an offence. So, but if we don't find the nest, then we could be in more trouble. So what's the solution? This is where the licensing comes into play. We've put in place a regime that kind of allows for this issue to be solved. So licensing stays true to the regulation, and in the case of rapid eradication, only allows actions which are aimed at total eradication of the incursion to be carried out. This means capture release can be done by trained officials in a kind of recordable, controlled, and most importantly, legal way. This approach is a sensible way of ensuring that the key requirements of the regulation are properly enacted, while dealing with the trickier parts of the regulation to implement effectively. And in the UK, the licensing authorities for England is Natural England, and for Wales is Natural Resources Wales. I'm not quite sure about the other two. Management measures were also a section in the regulation where otherwise prohibited actions could be allowed if they were aimed at eradication, population control, or containment. again, licensing was needed to allow people to undertake these actions legally in a kind of regulated manner. So in England, there are 14 species that are considered to be widely spread. As part of designing our management measures, we carried out a public consultation and used the evidence provided to help guide what actions would be permissible as part of management measures. So the government's response to this consultation will be published soon. It's been on hold due to general elections, which I'm sure some of you heard about. It will set out what actions will be allowed as legitimate management measures. So, as well as all this work on the enforcement order, we've also been hard at work on other requirements of the IAS regulation. So we've put in place pathway action plans, or PAPs. So these plans just contain a series of actions for government agencies or NGOs to help reduce the risk of introduction and also the spread of species along that pathway. So this is in relation to Article 13 of the regulation. They're a collaborative piece of work across all the UK administrations. And so they basically determine the most important pathways to deal with first. To determine those most important pathways to deal with, because there's so many, we, and when I say we, not me, mostly Olaf Boy actually, carried out an analysis of the pathways of introduction. And he did this by assessing the importance of, by looking at a number of species, numbers and the impacts of species that have been introduced into the UK since 1950. So there's a total of 45 pathways in the internationally agreed classification, of which 31 pathways were actually relevant to the UK. We then prioritised the following 6 PAPs. So those are the ones in the middle there. So under hull fouling, we now have a complete boating PAP just for recreational boating. For horticultural escapes, there's a PAP working group that's going to be established in 2020. For horticultural contaminants and contaminants of ornamental plants, health provisions cover this partially, and a bespoke working group is also going to be established for this to finish this PAP in 2020. And then for the ballast, that's being covered by the work from the recent Ballast Water Convention. And then for stowaways on fishing equipment and zoos and botanical gardens, we've published an angling PAP and a zoo PAP. So just at this point, we'd also like to thank the other member states, in particular Ireland, Belgium, the Netherlands and France for their collaboration on the pathways for the angling and boating PAPs. I think it's been a really significantly large amount of work. And also thank you to the European Commission for facilitating the meetings that allowed for this collaboration to occur under Article 22. So we've also been working on developing contingency plans and taking direct action to kind of prevent, control and remove incursions of IAS into the wild. So the first contingency plan was developed for Asian hornet, and it's been put into action in 2016, 2017, 2018 and 2019. And a number of nests have been found and controlled annually. So far, we seem to be succeeding quite well using this plan, as far as we know. We further developed a sort of suite of generic contingency plans for terrestrial vertebrates, terrestrial invertebrates, terrestrial plants, and then freshwater species and marine species. And there are kind of species-specific annexes under each generic plan, with the species listed being not just EU-listed species, but also species identified under our GB horizon scanning exercise. So the response to incursions of raccoon dogs and sacred ibis, both EU-listed species, have been carried out under these contingency plans. And this is an example of the kind of direct action that we've been taking to ensure that IAS don't get out into the wider environment or develop populations within our territory. So a great example of the direct action that we've undertaken to remove an IAS-listed species is that of our work on ruddy duck. So the UK started control trials in 1999, and I think we had 95% of the feral European population at that time. So through significant efforts and trials, we managed to get the UK population down from 6,000 to 21 individuals, which is pretty good. And that was at a total cost of £5 million, but that was over 20 years. And that included significant spend from EU Life, but the majority was spent from the UK government. And we also further support other member states in their work in eradicating and controlling this species in their own territories. So what good is doing all this hard work without telling anyone about it or making the public aware of threats of IAS? So to help get the messages out, we have put in place a media and communication strategy. It was last updated this year. So the kind of aims of that is to ensure that we're communicating with the general public effectively about IAS in general, but also to ensure that we're engaging effectively with key stakeholder groups, so especially in relation to specialist pathways like horticulturists and anglers and boaters. So, for example, the Check Clean Dry campaign, which some of you will have seen on our materials outside, was originally focused on preventing the spread of IAS within GB. We know that there's a number of aquatic IAS not yet present in GB that are found in neighbouring countries such as France, Belgium, Netherlands, and these are often places visited by UK anglers and canoeists and boaters. So since 2016, the Great Britain Non-Native Species Secretariat, GBNNSS, I can never say that, and DEFRA have run a Check Clean Dry border biosecurity campaign. And that's been funded by 8 English water companies and also part funded by the Rapid Life Project. So that mostly involves putting up posters at ports that have links to mainland Europe, also ads in relevant publications like boating and angling magazines, but also even on EasyJet, they have a kind of onboard magazine, and apparently a lot of anglers use EasyJet to go fishing, so we put some in there. Social media campaigns, which have been, and also stakeholder involvement, and a lot of that's been facilitated by other organisations such as the Angling Trust, the Royal Yachting Association, and British Canoeing, because a lot of them have members which they can then publicise to themselves. So they have a whole new level of kind of audience there. One of our top priorities is to prevent IS and other non-native species from being introduced in the first place. Prevention is always better than having to do all the control. So we kind of feel that this kind of communication strategy will help prevent these species being transported back to the UK through these pathways. So I don't know how many of you might have heard of this. We've also implemented Invasive Species Week, which is a really great piece of work, and it kind of links in a lot to thoughts about sort of around the regulation. So it's coordinated by the GBNNSS, and launched in 2015. It began as a week of just awareness raising on social media, but it's really kind of expanded and grown to include events. There was 93 events in 2019, and also things like training on the practical management of IAS and awareness raising stalls and workshops. And it's all run by organisations taking part. And I think there were 320 organisations that took part in it in 2019. So DEFRA and Scottish ministers have also taken part in the events, with the UK minister this year pulling up American skunk cabbage. Nice to see them actually getting out and doing some practical work. In 2018, it's been extended to all 8 countries involved in the British-Irish Council. So that's England, Guernsey, Ireland, Isle of Man, Jersey, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. I think that's all 8. It's been quite a sort of, I feel like it's been a huge success really, and been very effective at spreading the message about the risks of IAS to the general public. So in terms of implementation, we feel that more people understand the risks that IAS pose, and the need to be vigilant is a key part of ensuring the regulation is effectively implemented in the UK. So I'd like to close with the following points regarding the retention of the EU regulation to UK law. So on the UK's exit from the EU, the IAS regulation will become part of the retained EU law in the UK. UK legislation will maintain the existing safeguards, and it does not change existing policy. Replacement bodies in the UK will take on the responsibilities that are currently undertaken by the Committee and Scientific Forum. Again, I'm really sorry that I was doing this presentation and not Finn. I'm sure he would have done a bit of a better job. If you've got any questions, please send them to this email address and don't give them to me. And yeah, sorry for reading notes for most of it.
Thanks a lot, Alexia, for taking it over so quickly. I'm now really happy to welcome Emmanuelle Sarah from IOC and French Committee. Normally, she should have been doing this presentation with a colleague of her, representing the French Ministry of Ecology, but she will be there alone and she will present everything by herself. So welcome, Emmanuelle. Thanks a lot.
Merci Sonia. Donc, je vais faire cette présentation en français pour rentabiliser le système de traduction. Voilà, je vois que ça marche. Oui. Oui, très bien, pas de souci. Merci. Donc effectivement, on devait faire cette présentation à 2 voix, donc avec François Delacaise, qui est la personne responsable de la mise en place du règlement au niveau français. Et puis moi-même, donc je suis du comité français de l'UICN et je coordonne donc le Centre national de ressources sur les espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc au niveau français, pour mettre en place ce règlement, finalement, on s'est concentré sur plusieurs points prioritaires, puisqu'il y a beaucoup d'actions à mettre en place. Et donc, ça défile tout seul, je ne sais pas pourquoi. Can I make it stop so I can remember the slides myself? Merci, sinon j'avais 10 secondes par diapositive, alors c'était un peu rythmé. Donc je vous disais donc, que pour mettre en place le règlement européen, donc la France s'est concentrée sur vraiment des actions prioritaires puisqu'il y avait énormément de choses à faire. Et donc on a surtout travaillé sur la législation et la mise en place de la réglementation au niveau français. Donc on a travaillé sur la mise en place des restrictions réglementaires, donc vraiment l'application du règlement européen. On a travaillé aussi sur la mise en place de tous les régimes dérogatoires pour les établissements qui détenaient ces espèces exotiques envahissantes, mais aussi les particuliers. On a eu un gros travail à faire pour les listes nationales et pour toutes les listes à établir dans nos régions ultrapériphériques, puisque la France n'est pas que la France métropolitaine et on a beaucoup de territoires ultramarins. On a travaillé sur l'analyse des voies d'introduction et les systèmes de surveillance. Et puis il y a également beaucoup de mesures de gestion qui sont déjà mises en place au niveau français, mais qui restent à coordonner. Donc on a un gros travail à faire sur la gestion et sur le contrôle aussi de la propagation. Voilà. Donc en fait, la législation française disposait déjà d'une réglementation relative aux espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc on avait une liste principalement d'espèces de faune qui étaient interdites d'introduction sur le territoire français uniquement. Et donc, quand la réglementation européenne est arrivée, on a dû rajouter des espèces de flore, puisque nous n'avions que la jussie, enfin les 2 espèces de jussie qui étaient interdites d'introduction et de vente sur le milieu naturel. Donc, on a rajouté toutes ces espèces de plantes sur ce premier niveau, donc une interdiction d'introduction dans le milieu naturel. Et puis, on a créé un autre article pour ajouter un niveau 2 d'interdiction, donc plus restrictive, pour interdire l'interdiction sur le territoire, l'introduction dans le milieu naturel, la détention, l'utilisation, l'échange, l'achat, la vente et le transport pour les espèces du règlement européen. Voilà. Donc ces 2 articles sont dans le Code de l'environnement et ils sont en fait rattachés à des listes d'espèces réglementées qui sont définies par des arrêtés ministériels qu'on remet donc à jour à chaque fois qu'il y a des nouvelles espèces qui sont inscrites au niveau européen, sachant qu'on a aussi la possibilité de rajouter des espèces non listées au niveau européen sur la liste française. Donc ça a pris beaucoup de temps, puisqu'on touche au Code de l'environnement, donc c'est des processus législatifs qui ont pris beaucoup de temps. Alors, on a fait donc des arrêtés faune et flore pour ces 2 niveaux d'interdiction pour la métropole, mais maintenant qu'ils sont sortis, il faut les mettre à jour, puisque la liste européenne s'est agrandie, donc il faut qu'on reprenne tout ce processus. Et puis on a travaillé donc sur tous nos départements d'outre-mer. Donc la France des Outre-mer, c'est assez large. On a beaucoup de collectivités dans le Pacifique, dans l'océan Indien, dans les Caraïbes, etc. Mais seulement 6 régions ultrapériphériques sont concernées par le règlement européen. Donc la Martinique, la Guadeloupe dans les Antilles. Voilà. Hop, je peux vous montrer. La Réunion et Mayotte dans l'océan Indien. Et puis la Guyane, donc en Amérique du Sud. Donc en fait, pour chacun, il y a aussi Saint-Martin dans les Antilles. Donc pour chacun de ces territoires, il a fallu faire des arrêtés pour la faune et pour la flore avec ces 2 niveaux d'interdiction. Donc ça nous prend beaucoup de temps. L'Europe d'ailleurs n'est pas très contente puisque nous devions rendre ces arrêtés et nous ne l'avons toujours pas fait. C'est peut-être pour ça que le ministère n'est pas là aujourd'hui. Donc ça avance bien quand même. Donc pour les espèces qui sont simplement interdites d'introduction dans le milieu naturel, nous avons nos arrêtés pour l'ensemble des RUP, sauf pour Saint-Martin et pour la métropole, bien entendu. Et pour les niveaux 2, donc avec les interdictions plus compliquées à mettre en place, comme l'interdiction de commercialisation, de vente, de transport, etc., nous avons tous les territoires qui sont couverts donc, par des arrêtés pour la flore, et il reste donc les arrêtés pour la faune à mettre en place. Donc ça nous prend vraiment beaucoup de temps, et vous allez comprendre pourquoi. Parce que comme on est français, on n'aime jamais faire les choses de façon simple, et qu'en fait, la réglementation relative aux espèces exotiques envahissantes, elle est dispersée dans différents codes et différents ministères, finalement, et elle est connectée avec plein d'autres réglementations. Donc, le ministère de la Transition écologique et solidaire, donc en charge des questions de l'environnement, gère plusieurs réglementations, donc la réglementation espèces exotiques envahissantes et la mise en œuvre du règlement européen. Mais finalement, les espèces exotiques envahissantes, on les retrouve dans plein d'autres législations et règlements, donc la faune sauvage captive, donc, qui touche à la détention des espèces exotiques envahissantes, la réglementation sur la pêche en eau douce, qui comprenait des interdictions d'introduction d'écrevisses, de poissons, d'amphibiens, la réglementation sur la chasse, qui liste certaines espèces exotiques envahissantes comme espèces gibier, les ICPE, donc c'est les installations classées qui vont concerner par exemple les établissements d'élevage de visons d'Amérique, la réglementation CITES, donc pour le commerce international des espèces, et puis on a rajouté la réglementation des déchets, puisque vous y êtes peut-être confrontés dans votre pays aussi, mais une fois qu'on a retiré les espèces exotiques envahissantes, et notamment les plantes, il faut qu'on les valorise et qu'on les élimine de façon légale pour récupérer la biomasse. Donc le ministère en charge de l'environnement s'occupe de toutes ces réglementations. Et vous savez que les espèces exotiques envahissantes ont aussi des impacts donc, sur la biodiversité, mais sur l'économie et la santé. Donc, le ministère de l'Agriculture et de l'Alimentation travaille sur les dangers sanitaires et la réglementation phytosanitaire qui existe aussi à un niveau européen. Ce sont eux, donc, du coup, qui s'occupent de tout ce qui est contrôle aux frontières des produits végétaux et animaux et des espèces qui vont entrer sur le territoire. Donc il y a un gros travail à faire avec eux pour connecter cette réglementation phytosanitaire avec la réglementation espèces exotiques envahissantes. Et puis enfin, il y a la santé qui s'occupe des espèces qui sont nuisibles à la santé, donc principalement l'ambroisie à feuilles d'armoise que vous connaissez, mais aussi un petit peu la berce du Caucase, par exemple. Voilà, donc il faut qu'on arrive à faire communiquer ces trois ministères entre eux, ce qui n'est pas simple. Et puis, par exemple, les arrêtés ministériels qui présentent les listes d'espèces sont co-signés par le ministère de l'Agriculture et de l'Environnement. Donc il faut qu'ils se mettent d'accord, etc. Ce qui nous prend beaucoup de temps et qui nous donne lieu à des retards. Donc en parallèle de cette réglementation, on travaille aussi sur les régimes dérogatoires pour que les personnes qui détiennent actuellement les espèces exotiques envahissantes puissent être en conformité et les détiennent de façon légale. Donc on a mis en place 3 différents régimes dérogatoires pour l'instant. Donc le premier s'est intéressé aux propriétaires non commerciaux, donc les particuliers qui détiennent des espèces exotiques envahissantes, avec la mise en place d'un régime transitoire et des obligations de marquage des animaux et pour s'assurer qu'elles sont aussi détenues dans des conditions de confinement. Donc, on a fait aussi 3 brochures pour expliquer cette nouvelle réglementation. Donc, le grand public est la cible la plus compliquée à toucher pour les informer sur la détention de ces espèces, puisque même avant la réglementation, finalement, ils n'étaient pas au courant de leurs obligations de marquage, etc. Pour les établissements de conservation et de recherche, donc les zoos, les laboratoires, etc., pour détenir des espèces exotiques envahissantes, ils ont besoin d'autorisations qui sont délivrées au niveau préfectoral, donc les autorités locales. Ils n'ont pas le droit de la commercialiser ni de l'introduire, et ils sont obligés de les marquer. Donc actuellement, il y a 70 zoos qui disposent de permis au niveau français. Il y en a beaucoup plus, donc il faut qu'on fasse aussi un travail de prévention pour qu'ils obtiennent ces permis. Et puis le dernier, c'est les établissements à vocation commerciale. Il y a une petite erreur sur mon diaporama. Donc c'est toutes les jardineries, les animaleries qui détiennent encore ces espèces. Donc il y a un régime transitoire qui est accordé pour qu'ils puissent écouler leur stock, et puis un régime permanent avec dérogation au niveau de l'Europe, notamment pour pouvoir commercialiser ou produire ces animaux et ces plantes. Et pour l'instant, on n'a eu aucune demande à jour. Donc voilà, il faut qu'on les informe et qu'ils se mettent en règle. Il y a des contrôles qui commencent à être faits de la part des services de l'État, mais c'est encore pas tout à fait opérationnel. Et donc on a édité 3 plaquettes qui listent toutes les espèces et qui rappellent les obligations de chacun de ces détenteurs d'espèces. Concernant l'analyse des voies d'introduction, donc je vois que la Belgique et le Royaume-Uni ont bien avancé. Donc on a également fait ce travail d'identification des voies d'introduction pour les 49 premières espèces du règlement. Donc maintenant il y en a 66, donc il faut qu'on recommence ce travail-là. Donc il faut qu'on le complète. Et puis, il faut qu'on travaille sur des plans d'action et qu'on développe les contrôles aux frontières. Donc, on est en train de mettre en place différentes réflexions avec les services des douanes et les services vétérinaires et phytosanitaires, donc avec le ministère en charge des questions d'agriculture. Donc, ce travail a été mené par l'Agence française pour la biodiversité avec Arnaud Albert, qui est dans la salle. Donc, si vous avez des questions, on est 2 Français, hein, vous ne pouvez pas nous rater aujourd'hui. Donc, si vous avez des questions, vous pourrez les poser directement à Arnaud. Alors, l'autre travail qui a été mené, c'est la mise en place d'un système de surveillance, qui est donc une obligation réglementaire. Donc, pour l'instant, il y a un premier travail qui a été fait pour identifier l'ensemble des acteurs de la surveillance au niveau du territoire français, puisqu'on est quand même un pays relativement grand avec beaucoup de régions et beaucoup d'acteurs. Et on a commencé à travailler donc sur les circuits de collecte de l'information, donc qui sont les acteurs sur le terrain qui peuvent observer l'apparition de ces espèces et comment on les transmet au niveau national pour faire remonter les informations. Donc cette année, on a diffusé des premières alertes nationales, donc le circuit de remontée de l'information est plus ou moins opérationnel. Et donc malheureusement, on a découvert 3 nouvelles espèces d'écrevisses exotiques envahissantes sur notre territoire, dont une réglementée, donc la Procambarus phalax, qui est dans le Grand Est, donc pas très loin de la Belgique, attention. Et puis 2 autres espèces, donc Cherax destructor et puis Factionus rusticus. Voilà. Donc maintenant, l'information circule bien, mais maintenant, il faut qu'on travaille vraiment sur l'opérationnalité de ce système de surveillance pour pouvoir intervenir de façon précoce et rapide, et notamment débloquer des fonds d'urgence pour pouvoir faire quelque chose. Et il reste des sites prioritaires à identifier pour cette surveillance, donc les voies d'entrée de ces espèces sur le territoire, les zones naturelles avec un intérêt particulier, etc. Il faut qu'on fasse tout ce travail-là. Alors ça, c'est les actions qui sont, on va dire, obligatoires par le règlement européen, mais l'État français met aussi en place d'autres actions sur les espèces exotiques envahissantes en dehors de cette réglementation. Donc depuis 2017, on a un plan biodiversité donc, qui comporte diverses actions. Et donc on en a 2 sur les espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc c'est l'État qui s'engage à interdire d'ici 2020 l'utilisation des plantes invasives dans les aménagements publics. Donc il y a tout un effort qui est fait par les collectivités et par les filières horticoles pour retirer certaines espèces exotiques envahissantes de leurs aménagements. Il y a un code de bonne pratique qui a été fait notamment au niveau français et il y a des travaux en cours sur des listes de substitution comme ce qui a été fait avec le programme Alter-IAS en Belgique. Et puis, il y a une volonté forte aussi d'intervenir, de mettre en place des actions concrètes de gestion dans les territoires insulaires français, donc notamment les territoires ultramarins, qui sont des systèmes insulaires fragiles vis-à-vis des invasions. Donc il y a quelques financements qui sont débloqués pour ces actions-là, mais ça reste quand même vraiment minime. Alors l'autre outil qui nous sert beaucoup, qui vient vraiment en appui de la réglementation européenne, c'est qu'on a mis en place une stratégie nationale, donc en 2017, qui permet de mettre en œuvre la réglementation et qui la complète sur certaines actions. Donc c'est une stratégie classique, comme vous pouvez tous connaître, avec 5 axes. Donc sur la prévention de l'introduction, les interventions de gestion et de restauration des écosystèmes, l'amélioration et la mutualisation des connaissances, et puis tout le volet communication, sensibilisation et formation, qui est important sur cette thématique, ainsi qu'un volet gouvernance pour que les actions soient coordonnées à l'échelle française, qui est composée de différentes régions. Donc il y a des actions structurantes qui sont mises en place, donc la réglementation, on en a parlé, la surveillance, la gestion. Et puis, je vais vous parler plus particulièrement de tout ce qui est circuit d'information et de communication, avec notamment la mise en place d'un centre national de ressources et de campagnes d'information et de formation. Voilà. Donc, depuis 2019, nous disposons donc d'un centre national de ressources sur les espèces exotiques envahissantes, qui est un dispositif d'appui aux acteurs concernés par les invasions et qui est copiloté donc, par un établissement public, l'Agence française pour la biodiversité, et par une ONG, donc le Comité français de l'UICN. Voilà. Donc, les objectifs de ce centre de ressources, c'est vraiment d'améliorer l'efficacité des démarches de prévention et de gestion. Et on met en place 3 grandes actions. Donc on essaie d'accompagner la montée en compétences des acteurs, et notamment des acteurs de terrain sur ce sujet-là. On est là pour produire, capitaliser et diffuser les connaissances et le savoir-faire sur la gestion des espèces exotiques envahissantes. Et l'idée, c'est donc d'avoir une communauté de pratique et de mettre en place un apprentissage collectif autour de la connaissance et de la gestion des espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc ce centre national de ressources, il repose en fait sur un réseau d'expertise scientifique et technique assez large, qui rassemble toutes les parties prenantes de la gestion des espèces exotiques envahissantes au niveau français. Donc on a des chercheurs, des gestionnaires, des services de l'État, des services des collectivités, des associations, des établissements publics bien entendu, mais aussi des entreprises et des acteurs privés. Et chacun vient avec son expertise, donc sur la faune, sur la flore, mais on a aussi des experts pour les questions sociologiques, économiques, etc. Voilà, donc c'est un groupe d'échange qui permet d'aborder toutes les questions relatives aux espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc on a 80 personnes qui participent et qui nous aident à identifier les besoins et à mettre en place des outils pour la mise en œuvre du règlement et de la stratégie nationale en France. Donc pour mettre à disposition des informations, on a une plateforme que vous voyez ici, donc qui existe en français et en anglais, et qui vous permet d'accéder à de nombreuses informations sur les espèces exotiques. Donc il y a plus de 2000 documents qui sont accessibles, des informations sur les espèces, des actualités, de la documentation, etc. Donc vous pouvez consulter le site. Donc on a plusieurs outils pour informer l'ensemble des acteurs français au sujet des espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc on a une lettre d'information qui paraît tous les 2 mois. Donc depuis cette année, on émet des alertes nationales quand on découvre les espèces et on les transmet bien entendu à l'Europe et aussi aux régions voisines. Donc je pense que certains d'entre vous les reçoivent. Et puis on produit des outils. Donc nos outils phares, ce sont des retours d'expérience de gestion. Donc ce sont des documents qu'on co-rédige avec les gestionnaires et qui détaillent vraiment concrètement sur le terrain ce qu'ils ont fait sur les espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc vous avez une description du site, des descriptions très détaillées de la technique, des outils qui sont utilisés, combien cela a coûté, les résultats qu'ils ont obtenus et puis les actions de communication qu'ils ont mis en place. Donc on a plus de 100 retours d'expérience de gestion qui sont disponibles sur 40 espèces et qui sont consultables. Et ça, c'est notamment une source de données très précieuse pour le rapportage sur les interventions de gestion pour les règlements. Voilà. On s'est aussi rendu compte finalement qu'au niveau français, les informations sur les espèces exotiques envahissantes et la gestion étaient un petit peu dispersées de partout et on n'avait pas de plateforme nationale pour recenser et centraliser toutes ces informations. Donc on a créé une base d'informations qui porte sur plus de 400 espèces, donc de faune, de flore, des milieux aquatiques terrestres et bientôt marins. Et donc vous tapez le nom d'une espèce dans la base et vous arrivez sur des fiches qui centralisent tout, qui renvoient vers d'autres plateformes, donc qui renvoient par exemple sur les plateformes anglaises et belges pour trouver plus d'informations. Voilà. On travaille aussi à la rédaction de publications scientifiques et techniques sur différents sujets. Donc on a publié des guides de bonnes pratiques que vous connaissez peut-être, on a 3 volumes maintenant, et puis on s'attaque aussi à des sujets un peu plus techniques. Donc par exemple, on a travaillé sur la question de la valorisation socio-économique des espèces exotiques envahissantes, en essayant d'identifier un petit peu les risques et les points de vigilance. Et puis on a travaillé là récemment sur les besoins de formation et d'accompagnement auprès des acteurs français, donc en recensant tout ce qui était fait et la formation qu'on pouvait proposer pour combler un petit peu ces lacunes. Et puis on a un volet donc, de valorisation internationale. Donc sachez que toutes nos publications sont traduites en anglais et donc vous pouvez en disposer. Et puis on organise aussi des événements internationaux. Donc le dernier en date, c'était avec nos collègues du Life Rapide à Concarneau. Voilà. L'appui technique qu'on fournit auprès de ces acteurs, donc, c'est de les mettre en réseau, donc en organisant des journées d'échanges techniques. On organise des sessions de formation nationale. Donc on en a fait une l'année dernière et on en fera 3 l'année prochaine. Et puis on répond à toutes les sollicitations des acteurs français qui ont des questions sur la gestion, sur la réglementation, etc. Donc on répond à toutes ces sollicitations, on sert un petit peu de guichet des questions et des doléances sur le sujet. Alors pour finir, il faut quand même qu'on parle un petit peu des limites de cette politique. Alors François devait faire les points négatifs et je vais faire les points positifs, mais je vais faire les deux, désolée. Donc ce qu'on constate, nous, au niveau français, c'est que vraiment, c'est une thématique qui monte en puissance. Donc on a de plus en plus de questions, les enjeux sont de plus en plus forts, ils sont de mieux en mieux compris. Mais malheureusement, on a des moyens humains et financiers encore très limités pour intervenir et pour passer de l'échelle de coordination à l'échelle opérationnelle sur le terrain. Au sein du ministère, donc ça c'est François qui l'a écrit, il considère que la politique est orpheline, donc c'est des mots quand même assez forts. Donc il est tout seul au ministère pour mettre en place un règlement européen. Il y a une collègue qui travaille sur les milieux marins, mais ça reste encore tout petit. Donc il y a vraiment un besoin fort de renforcer la présence du ministère pour la mise en place de cette problématique. Il y a beaucoup d'acteurs qui sont impliqués, donc les parties prenantes sont très nombreuses. La gouvernance, pour l'instant, est multiple, elle est dispersée. Et puis vous avez vu que la réglementation est compliquée, et donc il faut qu'on arrive à la coordonner et à la faire comprendre par l'ensemble des acteurs sur le terrain. Les moyens de gestion, vous le savez, restent encore empiriques. On n'arrive pas à prévoir quelles espèces vont devenir envahissantes. On a des situations qu'on peut considérer comme hors de contrôle qui peuvent être aussi décourageantes pour les acteurs sur le terrain, donc ce n'est pas toujours facile. On a des freins économiques et politiques sur certaines espèces, clairement. Donc, par exemple, le vison d'Amérique va être compliqué. C'est le cas au niveau européen, mais c'est aussi le cas pour la France, puisqu'on a encore quelques élevages. Certaines actions de gestion sont vraiment socialement contestées, donc on en a parlé aussi tout à l'heure sur les oiseaux notamment, les mammifères, où le public peut s'opposer aux interventions de gestion qu'on est obligé de mettre en place. On a aussi quelques débats au sein de la communauté scientifique et on a des regards très divergents en fait, sur ces espèces. Donc on a une partie des parties prenantes qui vont vraiment les voir comme ayant des impacts négatifs, mais qui nous disent que c'est peut-être aussi des impacts positifs et que c'est peut-être la biodiversité de demain, la biodiversité en ville, etc. Donc c'est pas toujours simple d'avoir un discours clair sur ces espèces et qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour prévenir et pour guérir les invasions. Et puis, la communication auprès du grand public est parfois difficile, puisque déjà, communiquer sur la biodiversité, c'est compliqué. Alors, différencier la nature d'origine qui serait bonne et la nature importée qui serait moins bonne, c'est un message complexe à faire passer sur lequel on doit travailler. Mais il y a aussi beaucoup de progrès ces dernières années sur cette question-là. Donc, au fur et à mesure, il y a vraiment une expertise collective qui a été développée par les gestionnaires, les chercheurs et tous les acteurs qui sont confrontés aux espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc, il y a une montée en compétences certaine. L'information est partagée de façon plus structurée et centralisée, donc notamment grâce au Centre national de ressources qui est là maintenant. Les territoires sont en train de s'organiser. Donc, en fait, au niveau de chaque région, il y a des coordinations qui émergent entre l'État et les différentes parties prenantes. Le réseau de surveillance est en création, donc tout ça, ça va arriver. On a de plus en plus d'outils pour aider les gestionnaires et les acteurs de terrain à intervenir. Donc, le récent outil qu'on a développé ces derniers temps, donc ce sont des stratégies nationales de gestion qui ressemblent un petit peu à l'exercice fait par nos collègues belges, donc pour essayer d'identifier où intervenir, quand intervenir et comment intervenir sur le territoire pour les espèces largement répandues. Donc pour aider en fait les acteurs locaux à se dire voilà, il faut intervenir, quelles sont les priorités d'action qu'on peut mettre en place. Et puis il y a aussi tout un tas de guides de bonnes pratiques qui existent. Les acteurs sont de plus en plus nombreux, ils commencent à se mobiliser, à s'intéresser à la problématique. Et puis, les gestionnaires sont capables maintenant de mobiliser des programmes LIFE. Donc, on va en voir cet après-midi, mais au fur et à mesure, ils sont de plus en plus compétents et armés pour débloquer ces financements. Donc, c'est une bonne chose puisque ça permet quand même, c'est un bon levier d'action au niveau européen. Voilà, et pour finir, voilà, juste pour vous dire que c'est une politique environnementale finalement qui reste très jeune. Donc, il y a un cadre qui existe, mais il faut qu'on arrive à le mettre en place. Donc, il faut aussi être patient pour que tout cela prenne forme. On a besoin d'échanger entre pays, justement, pour s'inspirer des différentes techniques et pour mutualiser certains outils, je pense, au niveau européen. Et puis, voilà, comme pour la France, la personne au ministère est seule, on a vraiment un besoin de renfort et de soutien de la part de la Commission européenne. Je ne veux pas regarder Myriam, pour nous aider pour la mise en œuvre, pour le rapportage, pour mettre en place la réglementation et pour débloquer des programmes de financement. Voilà, merci de votre attention. Si vous avez des questions, on reste disponible.
Non, parfait. Tu peux rester ici par contre. Merci Emmanuel pour ta présentation et ton traditionnel franc-parler. Levez vos mains pour les questions. Raise your hand for questions, please.
Oui, je voulais. Oui, it works. OK. Merci Emmanuel pour la présentation. On voit bien l'ampleur du travail et je suppose qu'on va y revenir largement dans la discussion générale, mais j'avais une question particulière à ton exposé. Donc, quand on transfère finalement le règlement européen à l'échelle nationale, on voit qu'on a énormément de travail. Il y a des choses qui se font à l'échelon européen et puis dans chaque pays, avec parfois des redondances. Et donc, par rapport à ça, je me demandais pourquoi vous avez modifié le Code de l'environnement pour mettre en œuvre toutes les interdictions de détention, d'introduction dans la nature, de commerce. Et est-ce que d'un point de vue juridique, le règlement ne suffit pas pour imposer toutes ces choses à l'échelle de la France?
Alors en fait, c'était pour être en phase avec ce qui existait déjà. Et en parallèle, on a eu une grosse modification dans le Code de l'environnement. On a eu une loi biodiversité qui est arrivé et qui a intégré les espèces exotiques envahissantes. Donc on en a profité en fait pour tout remettre à jour et intégrer ces espèces. Mais ça nous a pris trop de temps. Et effectivement, on pensait qu'un règlement s'appliquait directement en droit français et qu'on n'avait pas besoin de le traduire. Mais on a dû le faire quand même.
Ouais, et du coup, vous allez devoir mettre à jour, chaque fois qu'il y a une nouvelle liste, vous allez devoir modifier toute cette législation-là.
Alors là, on essaye de voir ça comme une opportunité. On essaye d'intégrer des espèces qui ne sont pas listées au niveau européen pour pouvoir prendre en compte des espèces qui nous embêtent, comme la crassule de Helms, par exemple, et la mettre au même niveau en passant par le droit français. On essaye.
Bonjour. Merci de votre présentation. Vous avez mentionné des freins politiques économiques qui peuvent toucher certaines espèces, comme le bison d'Amérique. Est-ce que vous pourriez donner quelques précisions précisément sur cette espèce-là? Qu'est-ce que vous voudriez faire?
Alors moi, comité français de l'UICN, je voudrais interdire l'élevage de bisons d'Amérique. Il en reste 5 ou 6 en France, donc c'est pas beaucoup. Mais vous connaissez la situation économique actuelle, donc dès qu'on touche aux emplois ou aux bassins d'emploi, le gouvernement est très frileux pour interdire. Ça touche aussi certaines espèces qui ont un intérêt commercial et ornemental pour les plantes. Donc il y a des efforts qui sont faits de la part de la filière horticole. Mais voilà, dès que ces espèces ont un intérêt économique et peuvent menacer des emplois en France, pour l'instant, le gouvernement est très frileux.
Thanks a lot, Emmanuel, again. Now I invite Henk Groenehout from the Netherlands, the Netherlands Food and Consumer Product Safety Authority, who will present the situation for the Netherlands. Speak in front of the microphone because we are recording.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Well, my name is Henk Groenewoud, a Dutch organization with a very difficult name. I even have to look it up myself. The Netherlands Food and Consumer Product Safety Authority, dealing with food quality, product safety, and also invasive alien species. We're part of the Ministry of Agriculture and therefore involved in the whole implementation of the EU regulation. I'd love to talk all afternoon, all day about this topic, but I only have 20 minutes, so I won't be complete. I'll just mention a few highlights. In this presentation, I'll first give you an introduction on the Netherlands, what is typically Dutch, and then I'll go into the questions that the organization have asked, the new structures that we have created, the strengths, weaknesses, and the challenges that lie ahead. So, the Netherlands, a very small country, somewhere between the UK and Germany, roughly the size of Belgium. River delta, rivers flowing into the North Sea. Very small, but very crowded. We have two, water. Water is very important in our country. The river delta, River Rhine, River Meuse flowing into the sea. Roughly 1/3 of the country is below sea level, and the water is everywhere. It's very important in our country. We have a huge airport and one of the largest harbors in the world, which are entry ports, important entry ports for invasive alien species in the Netherlands. We have a history of traveling and trading. Dutch love to go abroad, love to visit other countries, and we have loved that for hundreds of years. And we've always combined that with trading. Also trading plants, introducing plants. Horticultural sector is very important in the Netherlands. And the person you see at the bottom That is Philipp Franz von Siebold. He introduced the Japanese knotweed in Europe, and he did that in Leiden in the Hortus Botanicus when he was there. So we have a history of introducing invasive alien species. Now, for the government in the Netherlands, the government is also a bit crowded. We have the national government, of course, and although we are a small country, we have divided the country in 12 provinces. That is, the provinces are the basis, actually, of the Netherlands. And these provinces are very important for the nature policies. They are the ones that realize our Natura 2000 goals. And they are also important for combating in the struggle against invasive alien species. But for the water, I already said water is important. We have a special government for water issues, 21 water boards. They are also democratically chosen governments dealing with water quality and water quantity. And then we have the local communities. So a lot of different government organizations all have to work together in this small country to realize everything. As for the people in the Netherlands, we have a high computer literacy, access to information, access to internet. And we also have a history of protesting against the government. Your laws, not ours, that's what the people on the streets say. If we as a government try to establish something, people get the information, they have an opinion on it, and it's very easily to go to court as well against all the government measures. Now, that was the introduction on the country. These things will come back later on. The first question, what kind of new structures have we created? Of course, when the regulation came into force, we immediately started in incorporating that into our own nature legislation. In a very simple way, everything that's forbidden in the EU regulation is forbidden in the Netherlands as well. And we have penalties on that. But perhaps more important is that we immediately started to set up cooperation structures between all these different governments. We started a coordinating entity from the national government, provinces, and the water boards. We also contacted the local communities, but as there were no issues yet that were important for the local communities, they are not, they are a bit on the background, but they will come back to us in future. We set up all the other things that were necessary, like law enforcement, border controls, official controls on sites, etc. And we set up the monitoring and surveillance system. If you look at the three steps for combating invasive alien species, the prevention, rapid eradication, and management, the prevention is mainly in the hands of the national government, with all the laws and all the law enforcement and the border controls, etc. But all the other measures, the measures in the field, management measures, eradication measures, that's mainly in the hands of the provinces. And when it comes to water, aquatic species, they have to cooperate with our water boards. So it's a bit complicated. And just to give you an example, I always give this example. On the map on the left side, you see the waterways in the Netherlands. They are all interconnected. So once a species comes in from Germany or Belgium or from the North Sea into these waterways, it is able to spread all through the country. Two examples, the Chinese mitten crab, Eriager sinensis. Every year it spreads all through the system where it can come. Another one, the Elodea nutali, it's a small water plant. Both are on the union list, both these species. It is everywhere in the Netherlands. It has invaded every piece of water. You can find it everywhere. So we have this to deal with this regulation, find a way to do good things with it. What are the strengths of what we have created? I think the most important strength is the cooperation between all the different organizations. And the best example of that is the whole monitoring surveillance system. We've set up a cooperation between professional organizations and volunteers. There are species organizations for all different kinds of species group. For instance, the Mammal Society or the Flora Society, butterflies, reptile societies. These societies they do research. They have professional biologists. And these professional biologists coordinate the monitoring. They don't do all the work themselves. They have a huge group of volunteers involved in this work. So we have this, all these organizations for their own species groups do the professional monitoring using like 15,000 volunteers to do the work. We also have the citizen science part of the monitoring. That's a more voluntary part. As previously mentioned in the Belgian presentation, we have this internet platform waarneming.nl, exactly the same, observado.org. It has somewhere between 100,000, 200,000 single users using this system. People go out, they love to share what they have seen. So there's a huge database, 66,000 records, all from citizen science observations. Not all invasive alien species, it's all of nature. All this information, the professional monitoring and the citizen science monitoring, comes into one huge database, national database of flora and fauna, which now contains roughly 150 million records. It is huge. I think this is the best example and a strength of what we are able to achieve with cooperation between all different stakeholders. And I can give you an example how it works in practice. Of course, an example how it works ideally. In September, we got an alert from the system from, hey, someone has seen a Senegal tea plant, Gymnochoronis bilantoides. We thought it couldn't live in the Netherlands, but okay. So we got this alert, and we set out some experts from our own organization and Florum. They went out and they saw, oh yeah, indeed, it is a Senegal tea plant. Now, that was new for the Netherlands, so immediately, Article 17, we have to try to eradicate it. We contacted the province of Utrecht, and the person there immediately started cooperating with the water board, the local municipality, and the result is that a few weeks ago, the plants were removed. So this first sighting, the species is eradicated, and well, it works. This, of course, is an ideal situation, an example how it works. I can also give examples how it didn't work, how the whole system stopped. People didn't do anything, but sometimes it does work. What are the weaknesses in our system? Well, we have to cooperate with so many organizations and so many stakeholders and so many authorities. That leads to fragmentation. At this moment, there is little central steering. We do coordinate a lot centrally, but we have no force to enforce things, and we don't have the money to seduce others to do things that we want them to do. So it's all about trying to cooperate. It's all about persuasion that it's in the own interest of other parties to help combating invasive alien species. What doesn't help us is that invasive alien species is not a political priority, just as Frans mentioned. We are working on nature, we are focused on Natura 2000, but there are a lot of other political issues. We have a lot to do now with nitrogen. So invasive alien species is dangling somewhere on the lower sides. It's just not politically important. And then you have these furry animals and all birds and all mammals. People love them, and there is a lot of resistance in the Netherlands against killing these animals. So as soon as one of our governments makes a plan and states, okay, we're trying to combat these, for instance, the raccoon, we're going to kill it, and then immediately an uproar starts. And as all our political organizations, our political leaders are chosen by the public, they are very sensitive to what is happening in society. And as I said, in the Netherlands, we have 70 million inhabitants. We have 70 million experts who know better what to do than the government. They start lawsuits, they protest, and often there is no political will to enforce things, which makes it quite difficult sometimes. Some more of the challenges that lie ahead. We're working on the pathway management, pathway action plans. We're not as far yet as the Belgians. We did make a pathway analysis, but we thought it was not very good. Quality was quite bad. So now we're making a new plan to set up these pathway action plans. It doesn't mean that we're doing nothing, but because meanwhile, a lot of things are happening. In January, we will present our plans to the European Commission. That will be a provisionally concept plan, which also gives an indication on what we're doing already. One thing that we're struggling with is the intra-EU transport and intra-EU trade, both because we don't want species from the Netherlands going to other countries. For instance, the Chinese mitten crab. This picture is taken by the Spanish authorities that seized a shipment of Chinese mitten crab coming from the Netherlands while it was strictly forbidden. It's forbidden in Spain, it's forbidden in the Netherlands, it's forbidden in all other countries, and yet it happens. We have hardly possibilities to check on intra-EU trade because there are no border controls anymore. We don't want our species to spread to other countries, but we don't want other species coming from other countries coming to the Netherlands. And another example from that are the Mediterranean, several species of Mediterranean ants, which are causing quite a nuisance right now. And we can't do anything about it. The only thing that we can do is give information, communicate to all stakeholders involved, and that they do have to take care in what they are importing, when they are importing soil, when they are importing plant. They have to take care what they are importing, and they have to know the risks of what is happening. Well, this is the last sheet, so a brief introduction on what's on the Netherlands, the structures we created, the strengths and the weaknesses and the challenges. Any questions? No, thank you.
Hello. A question for you, Hank.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Yeah.
Delighted to hear you mention water boards, and thank you to Alexia for mentioning water companies. In England, we have a partnership of 8 water companies funding the GB Secretariat on national biosecurity issues. Do you have a similar setup in Holland?
I think that in the UK you have also water boards dealing with the water, how do you say that, drinking water issue. Well, in the Netherlands we also have drinking water companies, but these are different organizations than the water boards. The water boards are only for the management of surface water. So making canals, making lakes, making dikes, etc. They are working quite independently, and even if there were no EU regulation, they still would be combating invasive alien species because it costs them a lot of money. For instance, this afternoon you will hear a presentation on the muskrat and the other one, the koipu. That costs roughly, it's always a good example to state, it costs 34 million euros a year to combat these species. And we have to do that because they dig holes in the dikes and we don't want our country to overflow. But also a lot of water plants are growing in and blocking the waterways, blocking the flow of water. So they have to remove these water plants. The point is that they do not do that because they want to combat invasive alien species. They only do that because it blocks the flowing of the water. And that's the whole way we try to set up. We have no money to do things. We have no laws to enforce things. So we have to find exactly these items that are important for those stakeholders. And for the water boards, it is the flowing of the water, it is the water quality, and it is safety.
I think you need to get your water companies involved then. I look forward to talking to you later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very good to hear that different governments are cooperating, like the water boards and provinces. I was very curious, what is the name of this organization and who is leading it?
You mentioned the structure we created.
Yeah.
It's just a government structure. It's a working structure. So it's not an official structure like you've seen in the Belgian presentation. We had a steering group consisting of management members from the different governments. We had a working group, focus group under that. So it is an organization, but it's not very formalized.
But is there a way to access it? Is there a website? Is there?
No. It's like I said, it's quite informal working group. If you want information on that, feel free to contact me. Yeah.
Thanks.
Is it? Oh, it works. Thank you for your interesting talk. I have a question to this website you mentioned where you got the alarm that there was this invasive plant. Because I was not sure about if everyone can just sign in there and mark an invasive species there, or just experts, because that would be interesting if everyone can do that, if you have sometimes like a lot of errors of people thinking, okay, this might be an invasive one, but don't really know that and just mark it, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. That's an important issue. The website waarneming.nl, it's open to everyone. Anyone can present their sightings. There is a process of validation. Yes, that's the word. There is a process of validation. Sometimes that is done automatically because when you have a biologist or a well-known person you can trust, then it's easy to validate such a sighting. But sometimes the sighting is done manually by experts. We have set up an alert system with an agreement with the species organizations that when species, certain species of the union list and also non-union list species, when they enter the system, that they immediately get priority in the validation process. And sometimes for the plants, we can also do the validation ourselves. So there is a system that for validation, and it has priority. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
That's going to be the next one, not to show more.
So unfortunately, and this is the last change to the scheduled program, I promise, we had, obviously, our DEFRA representative couldn't come due to rail strikes. Alexia did a marvelous job of standing in. Unfortunately, we were going to have Annika Thiesmeyer from the German Federal Agency for Nature Conservation. She prepared a presentation. She is ill, so she couldn't come. We will include her presentation and also a report that she has provided on the analysis and prioritization of IAS pathways for Germany in the transcript, and presentations will all be available online, and also we will send them out to attendees. We also had input from Spain, who couldn't send somebody, but they sent just a couple of key points because we're about to lead into the discussion. So we have, this was from Ricardo Gomez Calmeistra from the Servicio de Vida Silvestre. And he sent us just a quick note. The most important points that he made were that in addition to the EU Union list, they have had their own national catalogue in Spain of invasive species since 2007, which covers 190 odd species. They have also worked on a draft regulation for species with invasive potential, which is looking ahead. He also stressed the importance of having up-to-date cartographic information, which I'm sure we can all agree is always a very pressing concern, and also the importance of having international collaboration, experts working together, including alert networks and early warning systems so everyone knows where things are when they show up. So that was their input. We now move into the group discussion, which Sonia is going to facilitate. Thank you.
I think we still can applaud for Rebecca. She kindly suggested to summarize all the input for this morning. So after some very interesting but relatively formal presentation, we wanted to gather your opinion and feelings in a more relaxed way, a relaxed format that invites the reaction, sharing, and open discussion, far from judgment. So please, it's going to be an open discussion. Don't judge your neighbor. We are here to hear your neighbor, to really welcome any diverging opinion. So we don't need judgment, but what we don't really need is avoid having this. But rather try to work in such kind of mood. So as in a therapy session, we will present you a few statements, and we will welcome your comments, your reactions. So are you ready? Let's start then. So the first statement we are going to discuss is that one. This is a comics from a famous Belgian comics, just translated for the one who can't read French. The cat is asking, "Are you happy?" And she's answering, "Yes, especially when it's just finished." So the question behind is, was it easier before the regulation, or is it better now? So what we would like to gather in terms of opinion is, for the country that already worked on IAS before the regulation, and now that have developed some new tools, new structure, is it better now, or was it easy the way it was less formal? So don't hesitate to jump into the discussion. I know a lot of you. I know you can be very, very productive in providing your opinion, so it's your turn. Raise your hand, please. Elena first, yes. Maybe Elena first, then, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I have to say that for Italy, the situation is better now because we are forced to do something. And we have to try to harmonize the different politics and direction at the different regional level. So I have to say that it's not easy because the main issue is that we don't have so many resources in terms of people and money, but at least we are obliged to do something, at least for some species. And so now people should think more about this issue.
May I just ask you to present yourself when you...
Sorry.
No problem. We all know you, Elena, but so Elena is from Italy.
Yes, I'm Elena Cicarico from University of Florence, Italy. And before the regulation, some regions developed some local blacklist, and try to do something with the invasive species, but many other regions no. And so after the regulation, we have at the moment a national decree implementing the EU regulation, and this national decree entered into force last year, and it's quite fast for the Italian law, because in 2-3 years we have this new decree implementing the regulation, and we have a lot of work to do. Because as I will present this afternoon, we have more than 3,000 alien species on our territory. And more than half of the species in the Union list are in Italy, so big issues. But we want to be optimistic.
Thanks a lot, Elena. Bram, yes, please.
Okay. My name is Bram Dont from Belgium, from the Flemish region, from the Nature and Forests Agency. To answer this question, well, it is better now, and it's especially the focus of the regulation on prevention that really makes a difference on short notice. So the hierarchical approach of prevention, then rapid response, then management. I mean, within the prevention, there are trade bans. They are enormously useful. As long as there's no trade bans, it's pretty useless to often even start managing. And now with these trade bans in place and the restrictions on use and possession and so on, those really matters on the short-term notice. So it's better now, for sure.
Thanks a lot. Other comments? Yeah, there.
I'm Margreet van Willigen. I'm head of the department Muskrat Control of 4 water boards in the Netherlands. And we are trapping the muskrat and kooipoe for several years in Holland by law. So we are allowed to trap them and to kill them. But the discussion on the political level, as Hank said before, is better for me now, because we don't have only have the discussion about the water safety because of the risk of flooding, but also of humane trapping and the ecosystem. We can also add it as an argument to catch the muskrat. And the European legislation helps us in that discussion. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
It's another argument that I can use in the political discussion. We have a party for the animals in our water board. So the discussion of water safety is not enough for them, but biodiversity is more interesting for them. And by EU legislation telling us that biodiversity is that important, we have more reason to catch more muskrats.
Thank you. Yes, here we have one.
Hello, P.A. Åhlén from Sweden, working with the invasive mammalian predators, mostly raccoon dogs, but also other mammals and birds. Yes, it's much better now, because the listed species gives us the law tool that we have unlimited land access. No landowner can stop us when it's a listed species. So it's much better now.
Okay. Any divergent opinion, actually? I think the Commission representative here in the room would be quite happy with all those comments. Yes, Emmanuel, please.
Yes, for France, yes, it has improved a lot of things. And I think the EU regulation has triggered a legal framework. So now we have national strategy and we have a national policy. So this is a first really good step. Without the EU regulation, it would be just a little problem, biodiversity problem. So I think the different authorities at the local scale see that there's a big framework coming from the EU, and so they're more eager to give money to act, because we have to. So this is a good thing, and I think my neighbor has another opinion to express.
Oui, moi je vais parler en français.
Présente-toi tout de même. Oui.
Et bonjour à tous, Arnaud Albert, Agence française pour la biodiversité. Je suis tout à fait d'accord, ça a créé une nouvelle dynamique, notamment en France, ça a permis, comme l'a bien dit Emmanuel, une stratégie, une politique, etc. Mais quand il va y avoir les sanctions, quand il va y avoir le rapportage, voilà, là c'est concrètement dans 6 ans, là, quand on aura de nouveau le rapportage, il va faire le point, est-ce qu'on a vraiment réussi ? Je pense qu'on va déjà connaître le résultat dès maintenant. Et la Commission européenne, à mon avis, elle va avoir le problème qu'elle ne nous donne pas les moyens, mais qu'elle ne va pas se gêner pour nous sanctionner. Voilà, c'est juste un point de vue. Et nous, on commence déjà à le sentir du fait de nos problèmes avec les listes pour les régions ultra-périphériques, où on a été mis en demeure, là on a eu un avis motivé. Et là, apparemment, le ministère va devoir consacrer du temps pour pouvoir répondre à ce problème-là. Alors que ce temps-là, il faudrait le consacrer à des opérations de terrain. Donc il faudra trouver le juste milieu entre oui et une dynamique, mais attention au retour de bâton. Voilà.
Okay, I know the comment we should organize such a group discussion just after the reporting moment, so that we will have maybe more diverging. Yes, Alexia here, please.
Hello. I just wanted to add, I think that it is really good on the whole, but from my personal experience working with invasive species, it can be a bit frustrating because people want to stick to the list so much that you end up not covering stuff that's also really important. For example, with the UK being an island, a lot of the species on the list aren't necessarily relevant to us yet. I'm sure it's still a risk, but then there are other species that we really want to tackle as well that aren't on the list and aren't considered as much of a priority, so then they don't get, as much attention.
Other reaction? Just for my own information, how many of you were already working on invasive species before 2015? Not bad, okay.
Can I?
Yeah, there is another. Yeah, please.
Can I ask if anybody else feels the same way as Alexia about it?
There will be another question on the same topic. Maybe we can come up further with that. There is some, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I work for the province of East Flanders, especially on rat eradication. So yes, we were doing a lot of things in the field yet before the regulation. So for us, it helped also in the argumentation to the policymakers, but I think it helped a lot. But the aspect I'm still missing is the money opposed to the actions in the field, because we are doing a lot, we're getting a lot of new topics, a lot of new species to tackle, but it lacks on budgets. So I think that's an important point we haven't discussed yet in this whole process.
We will address it quite soon. Another reaction on this statement? Question? Okay. We were discussing about priorities. It was perfect follow-up of your question, Alexia. So in terms of comparing again the before and after, related to the management priorities, has it changed a lot for you, the way that you have to address species prioritization, but also maybe management action?
Hello, I'm Mauro. I'm from the Life Biodiversity Biodiscoveries Project in Portugal. We work mainly with invasive plants, removing ice plant and acacias, 7 different species of acacia, from a small forest. The thing is, because our project is based on voluntary work, we started arranging plots for adoption. So people like small groups like scouts or just families, they would adopt the plots, and they would start ring barking the acacias or removing by hand the ice plant. The thing is, at first it's all fun and games because people like it, but then they get bored very easily, so they do this 2 or 3 times, and the volunteers are over it. So we had to manage in a different way. So all our efforts against controlling directly the invasive species changed a bit. So what we did was we started doing plantations with trees. We started to do engineering, natural engineering. So recovering a stream that we had that was completely invaded by eucalyptus and acacias. And we wanted to redevelop the area to be a swampy area again. Those were really important, mainly for maintaining the interest of the volunteers. And by doing that and adding these more interesting actions, we managed to keep them with the work on the field. I don't know if you all understood my point, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Etienne.
Thank you. Étienne Brancard, Service public de Wallonie, Invasive Species Unit. La réponse à la question, de mon point de vue, est un petit peu oui et un petit peu non. Disons qu'avec l'arrivée de la nouvelle réglementation, on essaye d'encadrer les gestionnaires pour effectivement aller vers de plus en plus de prévention et donc d'avoir les moyens pour combattre des espèces qui sont en train d'arriver ou qui sont encore peu répandues sur le territoire. Mais on fait face aussi à une forte résistance qui est que les gestionnaires sont habitués à gérer traditionnellement certaines espèces sur une base légale biodiversité ou une autre base légale, comme pour le rat musqué, comme ça a été dit pour les Pays-Bas ou pour la Flandre. Et donc maintenant, si on lit le règlement, ben on devrait gérer de manière moins prioritaire des espèces qui sont largement répandues, mais qui étaient autrefois gérées déjà de manière importante. Donc la balsamine de l'Himalaya, par exemple, la berce du Caucase, le rat musqué, sont des espèces qui sont largement répandues, mais vis-à-vis desquelles il y a historiquement des actions de gestion importantes qui ont été mises en place. Et donc les stakeholders et le public est habitué à ce qu'il y ait une gestion contre ces espèces-là. Mais on n'a pas des moyens infinis, donc si on veut adresser correctement les espèces qui arrivent, ben on devrait récupérer les moyens qui sont utilisés contre ces espèces-là pour les utiliser maintenant pour gérer du raton laveur, pour gérer des plantes aquatiques ou d'autres espèces. Et donc là, ça pose un problème parce que qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Est-ce qu'on arrête de gérer ou est-ce qu'on diminue les moyens pour les espèces contre lesquelles on avait mis en place des plans d'action avant le règlement? Est-ce que, pour prendre un autre exemple, la bernage du Canada, il y a des actions qui sont mises en place depuis plusieurs années où on capture les oies sur les sites de mue, il y a pas mal de moyens et il y a des résultats, c'est efficace. La bernage du Canada n'est plus listée, et on n'a pas assez de moyens pour gérer les autres espèces. Et donc, est-ce qu'on doit arrêter de gérer la bernache pour adresser les autres espèces? Et donc, ça pose vraiment un problème. Et la clé, le nœud du problème, c'est l'argent et les moyens. Et donc, peut-être qu'on pourrait imaginer que pour des espèces émergentes, comme au niveau de phytosanitaire, au niveau plant health, il faudrait avoir un fonds communautaire pour pouvoir alors agir, être sûr d'avoir les moyens d'agir dans l'urgence contre de nouvelles espèces en complément aux moyens qui sont disponibles au niveau national.
Okay, thanks, Etienne. This is a situation for a viewpoint for Belgium. Do other member states also share this view? Do you change the way you prioritize your actions before and after the regulation? Maybe some of the speakers this morning, maybe what do you think, Henk, maybe for the Netherlands, maybe?
I think the regulation did change a lot. Before the regulation, we were setting up our own policies for combating invasive alien species. And for instance, we had a voluntary agreement with water plant growers that they would not grow certain species. When the regulation came, that immediately collapsed, that voluntary system. So we had to start again, had to start from scratch. I see that because of the discussion on the implementation and the discussion on the enforcement of not being able to import species, not being able to grow species, and the discussions on killing of species, it raised a lot of awareness, so that has changed. And it also raised a lot of awareness in all organizations that have to deal with combating invasive alien species. So as to management priorities, I think it will take time. In the end, the regulation will have a huge effect, I think, but it will take a lot of time, and we have to prioritize on species that are important. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but
No, we are here for that.
On the one, it's just as stated. On the one hand, it did not change much because we were already combating invasive alien species, and on the other hand, it did change a lot. We get more attention, and we have to prioritize on new species. So it changes a lot. Yeah.
Merci, donc Emmanuel Sarah pour la France. Je vais le faire en français. Du coup, je rejoins Etienne un petit peu sur toutes ces questions. Alors, est-ce que... je pense que les priorités de gestion sont en train d'évoluer en France, mais je n'arrive pas à savoir si c'est l'état de colonisation par certaines espèces qui implique ce changement de priorité ou si c'est les effets du règlement européen. Donc on va avoir des régions finalement, par exemple pour les espèces de Jussie, qui sont colonisées depuis très longtemps, les gestionnaires interviennent depuis des années, et en fait ils évoluent aussi sur leurs pratiques et ils sont en train de se dire finalement on n'arrivera jamais à éradiquer, alors qu'il y a quelques années ils voulaient éradiquer. Il faut qu'on apprenne à vivre avec et donc finalement mettre en place des interventions d'entretien pour éviter que la situation devienne hors de contrôle, mais en essayant de limiter les moyens, etc. Donc pour ces gestionnaires-là qui avaient déjà toute cette expérience, je pense que le règlement européen n'a pas vraiment changé de choses. En revanche, pour certaines régions en France où les acteurs étaient moins impliqués et où ils n'ont jamais vraiment fait de choses sur les Jussies par exemple, les outils qui sont mis en place au travers du règlement européen et notamment ces histoires de priorisation et les stratégies nationales de gestion qu'on met en place qui vont permettre de dire dans cette région vous ne faites plus rien, dans cette région, vous faites de la prévention, ou dans cette région, vous faites de l'éradication rapide. Là, le règlement va avoir une influence sur les priorités de gestion qui auraient été peut-être différentes sans ces outils et sans ces guides.
Merci. Any other feedback from this? No. So as soon as we have to prioritize either species of actions, then it's a question of money for sure. So you are all involved in IS management in a way or another. Are you out of money? Don't be shy. It can't be the Commission first about that.
We are out of money
problem.
as well.
Hi, Spiros, welcome. You can speak for sure.
Spiros from the European Commission.
I don't
Yes.
speak loud to the microphone, please.
Yes, Spiros Flevaris from the European Commission.
Can we all hear him? No.
Yes, okay.
It works.
Spiros Flevaris from the European Commission. A bit also in a funny mode to say that we are also lacking resources ourselves.
So just for the one who didn't hear, the Commission is also lacking resources. You're not alone if you are. So what about the member states? It seems everything is okay, actually. We have a lot of money for managing IAS. Well.
It's all about priorities, political priorities. I don't think there's shortage of money, but there's shortage of the will to invest that money in combating invasive alien species when you have so many other issues to tackle. Do we have to close hospitals in order to combat invasive alien species? That is mainly for a government, that's the issue. Or do we have to spend the money on realizing Natura 2000 targets somewhere, or combating invasive alien species in an area where there is no Natura 2000 value? So it's all about priorities. I know there's a lot of European co-funding. There are huge funds. We've seen examples. We'll see examples in this afternoon. But it is co-funding, so you have to find the funds yourselves, and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of efforts. But if the stakes are high enough, then it is possible to find the money for doing things.
Is it shared by other member states? Yes, Rebecca, maybe?
I agree. I was just wondering whether people feel, it seems like there's a growing awareness of the problems of invasive alien species. Obviously, there are always competing priorities for where you put your money as a state, but I wonder whether there's perhaps not enough awareness of the seriousness of the issues with invasive species also to be able to rank those priorities, if people feel that.
Yes, Étienne?
Oui, peut-être. Pour continuer sur ce que je disais tout à l'heure par rapport à la question de l'argent, en fait, quand on peut introduire un projet LIFE avec un plan structuré sur le long terme, effectivement, ça peut fonctionner dans certains cas contre certaines espèces. Mais le point le plus critique, c'est quand on a les nouvelles menaces qui arrivent, les nouvelles espèces qui arrivent, et qu'on doit rapidement mobiliser des moyens sur le terrain pour intervenir. Et donc, il faudrait vraiment un fonds d'urgence pour pouvoir dire, ben voilà, maintenant on a l'écureuil gris sur le continent, on sait très bien que si on n'intervient pas où on trouve le cirrus Niger, qui n'a jamais été trouvé en Europe, on trouve une population établie quelque part en Europe, c'est clair qu'il faut intervenir tout de suite, c'est maintenant, ou bien on va être dépassé par le problème et on va avoir beaucoup de dommages qui vont être enregistrés. Et donc comment on fait au niveau des États membres pour, dans l'urgence, trouver des moyens qui n'ont pas été planifiés, qui n'ont pas été organisés au départ pour pouvoir faire ça. Ça, pour nous, c'est vraiment un gros enjeu, une grosse question.
Merci. Alors Étienne, pour la France, on s'est posé la même question. En fait, on aimerait pouvoir créer une enveloppe destinée aux fonds d'urgence pour pouvoir intervenir dans les cas de détection précoce et de réaction rapide. Et en fait, c'est compliqué pour plusieurs raisons. c'est qu'au sein du gouvernement et du ministère, ils n'aiment pas avoir une enveloppe flottante d'argent. On ne sait pas combien, on ne sait pas quand, on ne sait pas pour qui. Donc ça leur plaît pas du tout. C'est pas du tout dans leurs mœurs. Et puis, quand on a eu les cas de découverte des 3 écrevisses là, en France cette année, en fait, on s'est rendu compte que c'était difficile d'estimer une enveloppe à demander au ministère pour savoir combien ça allait coûter en fait, d'intervenir et d'éradiquer l'espèce. Donc déjà, il faut qu'on s'améliore pour arriver à estimer le coût de ces interventions pour ensuite pouvoir disposer d'une enveloppe et l'utiliser.
Merci. Monsieur, là.
Yes, Nils Karlsson from Sweden. I think we have to become better at communicating the value of a rapid response. I'm from the south of Sweden, and we have done a couple of plant eradications very rapidly that have been very cheap. And it's very important to communicate that and compare it to all the others where we could spend billions for the rest of our lives, and to really show how valuable it is to have this rapid response. So I think we should use media a lot and make people understand that this is taxpayer money that we are supposed to use wisely.
Thanks a lot. Maybe just coming back to Emmanuel's answer to Etienne's comment, are there other member states when such kind of emergency budget are available? Do you know if there are any? Sweden?
Yeah, we have, but it's a little bit similar, but in Sweden you have this fund for zoonosis. So if you will have a disease outbreak that will threaten human health, you have an open end to the state budget, credit card connected to the state budget. It's an open
wallet.
But it's, sorry to say, not for invasive species, but there is such a fund, probably in other states as well.
How are you managing to mobilize that fund for IS, or are you not? Okay.
Yes, Peter in the middle.
Yes, I would like to pick in on that comment. I think there is money, but often there is money. Like if I look at our own department, I'm Peter Boots from the province of Eastern Flanders. There is money, but if it is involving humans or affecting human health or something like that, so then often there is money or there can be money provided. But if you say there is a new species discovered and it could affect that or that species, then often the interest of providing money is much lower. So we try to be creative in that in our department, that often we say it is to prevent, for example, floodings, because we're working especially on water, and then there can be some money provided. But if you would say it's pure for ecological reasons, then most of the time it's much more difficult to convince people of providing money for your actions. So I think that is also certain an important point, because at the moment, I think it should not be that or that, but you can do it hand in hand, both of them together. So by providing funds for combating species, you can combat or prevent effects on human health, but you can also, for example, at the same time, work on ecology. So I think that is something which is very important for the future, that we should not always think that for some reasons it's important to prevent floodings or to make sure that human health is okay, but we should more think on a broader scale and think all of it together, and then provide the funds for it. And that is at the moment, I think, still lacking.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Peter. Yes, Helen, please.
Is this working now?
Yeah.
So I'm Helen Roy from the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and in Britain we're extremely fortunate in having the Non-Native Species Secretariat, and I'm not part of that secretariat, so I can praise them very freely, and we've heard of the work of Olaf Boy, for instance. But it means that we do have really good coordination, and for example with the Asian hornet, the availability of funds not only for the rapid reaction and eradication, but also in terms of providing infrastructure such as enhancing the surveillance and monitoring, but also increasing communication to relevant stakeholders, for instance. So I think within Britain, we're relatively fortunate, but I also think it's really important for us to be well connected with the other member states, of course, to have that communication flow from the rest of Europe and from us to Europe. So it's important that continues.
Thank you, Hélène. Yes, we have Miriam first, because she already raised her hand. Miriam first, and then Elena again.
Thank you. I am Miriam from the European Commission. First, I want to confirm what my colleague Spiros already said. You have heard the entire invasive species team from the Commission. Now we are 2 people. But apart of this, when listening to you this morning, I heard a lot of coordination and cooperation. And I think there are a lot of resources there also by just cooperating with people working on other issues. And I want to point to one sentence in the European Green Deal that was launched last week, but I will say something on this in the closing words. But there is one sentence there which I think is very important, and that is that all other policies, and it's written, all other EU policies should be involved in achieving the biodiversity targets. And so I think this sentence gives us a hook. Really, we need to go even further in working together and just also making use of resources from other policies. I think that there we have some scope of finding more strength and more resources.
Thank you. Back to Elena now.
Thank you. Also in Italy, the situation is quite challenging because the regions are in charge of implementing the regulation and conducting management actions. So it depends by the situation, region by region. And the national decree implementing the EU regulation foresees penalties, and you can use some of these fines coming from penalties to for the managing actions, but the national decree entered into force last year, so it will be a long process. And I have to agree that it's a matter of will and priorities. And I have to say that for the moment, up to now in Italy, we have this emergency about the marmorates stingbug, the Aleomorphalis. So agriculture is an important sector and a critical sector in Italy, and we have many alien species affecting our agriculture, so they are investing a lot of money there. And so for the moment, the priorities, for example, is contrasting the Aleomorphalis, so for example. So.
Okay, thank you. Valérie, just behind you.
Yes, I'm Valérie Dewel. I'm working at the SPW in Belgium, and I just want to make a comment, but I'm really new in all this. Is that there is maybe a difference on risk for this kind of species from the different country. Thus, I just heard that in Italy there is so many species in the list, and maybe less in Belgium. And this, is there a specific fund that could take care of this difference of risk between the different countries? And beside that, at the national level, there is possible origin of funds from government, of course, but maybe as well from industry, like the funds for the zoonosis, but that's maybe government more or less. But maybe from agriculture, there might be funds that are possible. And beside that, as well, the public funds, the crowdfunding or that sort of fund. So I don't know if you have any comment on the fact that maybe there is some country with different number of lists in their country, and there may be some fairness in this. Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit on our Christmas wish list, I must say. Andy, yes, please.
So Andy Shepherd from CSR in Australia. I just thought I'd throw in a few observations from an Australian perspective. And that is, I think that the question you're answering is probably wrong. Are we out of money? It's how do we incentivize other sources to fund the work you need to do? In Australia, one of the successful ways, or semi-successful ways, we've been able to generate more investment in managing invasive alien species is by working with the corporate sector. And the corporate sector, there are two ways in which we've been quite successful. The first is through the government-imposed environmental offset scheme, which basically creates the need for corporate investment into environmental offsets and creating the argument that managing invasive species is one of the most cost-effective ways you can invest in environmental improvement. So that's been a direct way. And the second is actually working very closely with the NGOs, because the NGOs are spending all their time going out and trying to entice investment from the corporate sector. So if you work as a public agency with the NGOs, and I think of Island Conservation as one that does this particularly successful, you can get a corporate investment through those kind of channels.
Inspiring, thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Rosa Olivo from the Life in Basakwa. Regarding the mobilizing of different funds in Spain, for example, when the situation is extremely difficult, sometimes the emergency unit of emergencies, which is a military unit, has been mobilized. And then just regarding the prioritization issue that was mentioned before, I understand one of the difficulties is that it is, let's say, more or less easy to mobilize money when everyone can see the problem, but it is difficult to mobilize it when in prevention, to spend it in that preventive response, to spend the money in something that we still don't know that has happened. So I understand that is one of the difficulties.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kate Hills from Great Britain, South West Water. We have a very small GB secretariat, 3.5 people, I believe, who punch above their weight, and Niall and Olaf do a really good job. But this summer there was a government review on invasives, and one of the outcomes was that their budget should be increased threefold. And I think that national lead might encourage other organisations to invest more money in invasives as well. And as Andy said, encouraging the corporate or the industry sector to support this work is key. I mentioned that the water companies have a partnership of 8 people sponsoring the secretariat's biosecurity work already, but I think the secretariat need to look at other industries as well beyond the water company.
Thank you. Other comment about the status of your wallet? No. We jump into the next one. This one is about cross-border collaboration. I'm so happy that we have so many member states representatives here in the room. Are you more friends than enemies because of the regulation, or has it changed something in the way that you have been collaborating during the last few years? Maybe I can just start for Belgium. We are collaborating a lot before the regulation, actually, with the Netherlands, with North of France, with Luxembourg, with the UK, a lot, already before. But I'm not sure that it was increased through the regulation or after the regulation. So, looking forward to hear your opinion about cross-border collaboration. Yes, please.
Good morning, Dan Slootmakers, work for the Flemish Environmental Agency.
Hello.
We manage water courses and invasive alien species inside them. For this question, I believe it greatly depends on which organization you're working with, because we have good cooperations with many partners, but then again, it also depends on species. Say for muskrat, we have a better cooperation with France, for example, with the Netherlands, than when we are talking about plants. For plants, there is no cooperation whatsoever. So it kind of depends on the species and the partner.
So interesting to hear that collaboration may be species-oriented rather than just overall collaboration. That's interesting. Thank you. Yes, Helen, please.
Thank you. So I agree with you, Sonia, that the collaboration was happening beforehand, but I think what is wonderful about the regulation is it kind of puts that into a more kind of strategic framework, I guess. But it also says to the rest of the world how we are working together and collaborating across borders, and also within our own countries tells people about the importance of cross-border collaboration for the prevention and management of invasive alien species. So I think that it just strengthens what we had already. And I think as well, yeah, that thinking at a species level is really interesting too.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Just an example of cross-border collaboration from Sweden. We have 10 years of work. We have made the raccoon dog go functional extinct. But it's 1 million raccoon dogs born every year in Finland. So we have a problem. So we have the professional hunters in northern Finland on the bordering river area. The salaries are paid by Norway. The equipment are paid by Sweden. And the administration and the transport are paid by Finland. So we have a three-country cross-border to control the raccoon dogs born in Finland to coming to Sweden and Norway. So that's a very good system for us.
So rather friends, would you? Yes, Etienne.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear about the raccoon dog experience over there, but I think it's maybe an exception. I have a feeling there is a lot of cooperation concerning the information exchange, so the best practices, the best risk analysis, I don't know, prevention, the action plans, etc. We share a lot of information thanks to the regulation, but I'm not that sure about the management. And I think there are not so many examples where there will be a priority to manage a specific population because it's just nearby the border to avoid that the species will invade a new country or a new area. I do not think that currently the regulation reached that goal for a lot of species.
Anyone knowing this kind of priority settlement? I don't know how it was in Invexo or Friends about that. Did you select some of the species or some of the population because they were close to the border? Maybe Tim, you can answer.
Yeah, well, hello, I'm Tim from INBO, and I've been working in the past, before the regulation, in these Interreg projects, which were then not live, but another vehicle to get to European funding to actually do something hands-on in the field. And with regards to Invexo, so that was a project in Flanders and the southern parts of the Netherlands. The selection of species was really done based on the fact that they were problematic in that area, and we needed a cross-border approach to tackle them. So as to give you an example, Canada goose or Canada goose in Flanders are really very resident in summer, but they do have exchanges with Zeeland, which is the southern part of the Netherlands. So after a while, we were managing Canada goose before, but it's rather frustrating for a manager to clear an area of Canada goose and then to see 700 new Canada geese flying in autumn from a bordering area. So I really agree with Etienne's point, actually, that a lot will depend on the species and the management objectives that are set for them. But I consider this actually to be a good thing for us to be challenged on where will we put our money in the next 10 years, which species will we manage. And what you see in reality, I think part of the answer is indeed in better coordination, as Miriam raised. But it could also be in setting different priorities. if you look at the situation in Flanders, I think a lot of the budget that are now is going to be diverted to a range of other species is coming from the muskrat eradication program, because that's where the operational capacity was. That's where the money for managing an IAS was. But now it's not only muskrat anymore, but a whole range of other aquatic macrophytes and crayfish and stuff that we don't even know about yet. But I could imagine a lot of the, I mean, there is efficiency gains to be reached by setting different priorities and prioritizing more smartly.
Thank you. Yes, Rebecca?
So it's just, there's 2 points really. The first one was that so much time and energy and money, leading back to the former points, is saved by collaboration and communication. So not everybody is constantly reinventing the wheel, spending time trying to find things out or doing research that someone else has done. And it's great that there's so much communication we've had with Belgium and France that saves all of that. So first, before you spend the money, see if someone else can help you out. Also, from the perspective of borders, we're working on aquatic and riparian invasive species. In England, it's not so much a problem, but especially on the continent, the importance of working with the aquatic invasives at a river catchment level, and that has to involve cross-border collaboration between countries, but also between regions within some of the larger countries have struggled with that.
Thank you. Let's jump into the next statement. This is about the ecological responsibility from the sectors. So how can is it a need for encouraging this ecological responsibility for the commercial sector? Do you feel it's necessary, or do you prefer looking only at the management side of it?
So in our project, sometimes we receive corporate, large groups. I think the largest one so far was 150 people. And as volunteers, their work is not perfect. So sometimes the technical team has to go there after and scrape a bit more the acacias. But the fact is they work like crazy. They love the work they do. And if we add the other activities we can provide them, they love playing beavers when they are doing the natural engineering. So it's really important to bring large groups. Of course, they have to be divided. This is my colleagues. We all work for the municipality, so we bring more people and we do the groups, and people get really excited when they work, and because they are big companies, they talk to their friends, their families. And it's a whole more people than just taking 10 or 15 people at once. So it's crucial to have the responsibility from the commercial sector and having connections to the sector as well.
Okay, thanks. I have a comment by Alexia. Just here, Sander. Just
Hello. I was just going to say that I think, from my perspective, with the project we've been doing, one of the ways to encourage that ecological responsibility is through sort of incentives. So whether that's legal incentives that water companies might have to fulfill in order to meet other requirements that they have, or one thing that we're piloting in the Rapid Life project, which we'll cover later, is a biosecurity accreditation scheme. So water bodies can get accredited for excellence in biosecurity, and that can, it's sort of you get a gold, bronze, or silver kind of thing. And sometimes the kind of prestige and things like that can also be a motivator. I think you really have to sit down with your stakeholders and work out what it is that would incentivize them the most. although obviously money is something that always seems to be a bit short. But there's other things you can do, and quite a lot of the time people want to be involved in bigger schemes, particularly if you can get buy-in from several stakeholders at once.
There's another comment there. Okay, sorry, and then this way.
Okay, I fully agree with the previous comment, and I think it's.
Can you introduce yourself
yes,
first?
sorry. I'm Arnaud Monti from University of Liège. I think it's related to the way the regulation is enforced. For example, we worked with the quarry sector, and of course they were interested in knowing what kind of species, of invasive species they had, but the big question was, what's the risk for us in terms of legal aspects and so on. So depending on how do we enforce that law for the companies will depend the way, I mean, the amount of work or money they put in it.
Thank you, Arnaud. Yes, please, first here. First, Sweden there.
Yes. I think one good way is communication, because if we look in Sweden, the majority of invasive species are from the garden industry. And we do lectures at big garden shows. And one thing that we always find is that the people who work with selling the plants, they would like to be more regulated, because they don't want to cause problems and they don't have the knowledge, and it makes their life very difficult trying to get into the science behind invasiveness. So I think the national list is a very good system. Many countries have done risk studies, so the plants that will fall into the category of high risk, even if you don't have them, you should list them. And if you list them, then you will help the trade sector not to sell them.
Do you think they appreciate that? They're really, yeah? That's interesting for tomorrow as well, for the one who will be there tomorrow at the commission. Yes, Emmanuel. And first, Henk, I think you were. Please go ahead.
I totally agree with the previous speaker. Commercial sector needs clarity about what they can expect from the government. And I am not a fan of strict regulation, but I see that the threat of regulation and the threat of new legislation, rules, also is an incentive for the private sector to do good things. As I said, we had this voluntary agreement with water plant growers, and that voluntary agreement was only because there was a threat. If you don't cooperate, then we will make legislation. So that will always be important, I think. I'm still looking for other ways to persuade the commercial sector to take their own responsibility. And we see sometimes that commercial enterprises do want to take their responsibility. That if we can explain why certain species are a problem, that they say, okay, then maybe we should do something about it. I'm still looking for new ways. We're thinking about maybe we can set up a kind of retour system. I don't know the English word for that. That you can bring back unwanted animals that you bought, or that you can bring back plants that are infested with other species. I don't know if that will work, but we'll have to persuade the commercial sector to play their role as well, because there are huge pathways there.
First you, and then Emmanuel again.
I'm Patricia Silva from, can you hear me?
Yes.
From Province Flevoland. We have an idea for our management plan for the invasive alien species, and one of it is a contract with the garden, the companies that are going to make, for example, maaien van de giant highway, so that they sign a contract that they will be thoughtful and with the material. They will not be spreading pieces of the plant elsewhere. So I think that is also an option. How can we encourage ecological responsibility from the commercial sector in not such a large scale, it's a smaller scale, but we have to start somewhere.
Thank you. Emmanuel, now?
Yes, I believe the first step is to raise awareness and to get to know each other, because we speak two different languages, and they see us as the annoying people with legislation and forcing them, especially for gardeners and landscapes. In France, they want freedom of the plants and travel plants and stuff. And we're just there with the legislation saying, no, you can't plant that. So we have to talk to each other to explain what are the real issues and why we're annoying them. And you know, it's a question of trust and confidence between each other. And when we finally speak the same language, then we can ask them to make some efforts, and we can even challenge them and say, why don't you create landscapes with 0 exotic species? That would be quite a challenge. So I think in France things are improving. We have good contacts with professionals, and they have done a code of conduct, and Arnaud is actually working on a list of replacement plants to use in France. So things are getting better, and we also need the local stakeholders to get in touch with the local plants and gardeners and landscapes, and also for the animals. So yes, I think we have a lot of work to do for raising awareness and then find solutions.
Okay, yes, Elena, please.
Yeah, sorry, I'm responsible for Italy.
No.
So within the LIFE project ASAP, I will talk about this later, we have translated in Italian all the codes of conduct and adapted to the local situation in Italy, so for horticulture, pet owners, pet retailers, and so on. And we are drafting a list of alternative plants that horticulture, that retailers can use. And we are drafting this list of alternative plants, mainly native plants, in collaboration with the horticulture sector. So we are fostering the collaboration with the commercial sector in order to improve their ecological responsibility.
Thank you. Yes. Here in the front.
Thank you. The commercial sector always responds to financial and regulatory issues, but another side they like to respond to is the reputational side. And I think being encouraged to do things for the local area or the region on biodiversity issues would bring them big publicity gains that they'd be really interested in.
Anyone else?
I just that it was really interesting to hear Andy's perspective from Australia, that it's quite a cost-effective way for a company to look to be eco-friendly, to work in IAS, and perhaps prevention might even be the most cost-effective way if you can raise awareness of that, because the corporate sector is so heavily involved in the many pathways.
Okay, to the next one then. Emotional protest. We talked a little bit about that this morning. So how to deal with these people who are against animal culling or tree cutting. How can we do to deal with that, and how can we do it to our benefit as well? Maybe there is collaboration to be done there as well. I know we have some experts in the room as well, so don't be shy. Even if you had an old head on your...
Yes, my rather perhaps blunt and too simple a solution, or part of the solution, would be to increase our effort in research on stakeholder perceptions, because I think from a number of examples we've had before that many of the people that really object to this have either different reasons to object than the animal welfare one. For instance, they are against cutting trees, but then the fact that the government is coming in and culling some fallow deer is just another argument in this discussion of men taking over the landscape. So the stakeholder perceptions, we should understand them better, because I think often also it's a very vocal minority that we hear, and this minority does not reflect what the majority of people think.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you. Ilaria Di Silvestre from Eurogroup for Animals, which is an international NGO based here in Brussels. We think that an easy, I don't know, but a way to better collaborate with people that advocate for animals is to show that the fact that these are sentient beings is taken in consideration. So the requirement of the EU regulation on the fact that animals should be spared any possible suffering. If national authorities, when implementing the measure, clearly show that this is seriously taken in consideration, but yeah, this is not what is done in most of the cases at the moment. So if it is done in a more proactive way, also discussing with the organization and with the public and showing that this is a crucial part of the work on management, this will help a lot. Another thing is also the work on prevention, because of course from an animal welfare perspective, prevention is the best way to avoid problem of animal welfare. So put the focus on prevention is something that will always, or in most of the cases, will be supported by people protesting again for animal rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, just another example from Sweden. We this year got the mission from the government to eradicate the Trachemus turtles and the Egyptian goose from Sweden. So what we did was to connect to the stakeholders, in this case BirdLife Sweden and the herpetologist of Sweden. And before the field season, had meetings with them, explained what to do. And when we started this culling, all the emotional protests were covered by BirdLife Sweden and the Swedish Herpetological Society. So we didn't need to go into the debate because the stakeholders were taking care of the debate. So that was very easy task.
Well done. Yes, Alexia?
I think that's really interesting. Just to add to that, a lot of the people who do emotional protests do it because they care a lot about the nature and wildlife and things. So I think perhaps one way that's worked quite well in the past, I think in the UK with squirrels, for example, with grey squirrels, is to talk about the negative impact they have on our native wildlife. So, for example, squirrel pox affecting red squirrels, or crayfish plague, affecting the native crayfish, or chytrid with invasive amphibians. I think sometimes having that focus can make people think, oh, we want to look after our own species and it's a necessary, negative thing, rather than that, oh, we just want to kill stuff for the fun of it. I think really having that kind of focus on helping something else is probably the way to go.
Cool. There was someone else. Yes, please.
I work in Flanders with bird protection planners. And I think communication is really important, way in advance of some actions you're going to take, because it's good that BirdLife partners support sometimes the cullings, but it's also those organizations who suffer from the emotional protest, because people are stopped being a member of those organizations, and the negative effects are on their sides. So there also must be a balance in who is going to take the negative stuff.
Hi, I would like to say something for myself.
Sure.
I'm Karel Schoonvader from Inbo in Belgium, and I work on the Asian hornet. Now, I think there is a very big factor of education in here, in this thing, because when I see there's almost no objection of killing a wasp, because everyone thinks wasps are bad, they are dangerous. And where do you learn this when you're a child, when you are very young? And maybe this is something that's just a perception about invasive alien species needs to grow, just like wasps. The perception of a wasp being dangerous grows when you're a child into adulthood. So there might be some, we might give some effort when people are young to just notify what are invasive alien species and what they are doing, and that may facilitate in this issue, I think. So.
Thank you. Yes. Here.
Hi, my name is Noemi Shepherd. So I spent my summer actually volunteering for island conservation in the Galapagos, and I thought I could kind of have some input because they do a lot of animal culling in the Galapagos. And they're currently working in Floriana trying to cull rodents and cats, and they're actually working on an inhabited island where there's a lot of domestic cats. And kind of their biggest way of trying to convince the population that this was a good thing is trying to actually get, you know, the young people and the children to kind of take pride in the native Galapagonian flora and fauna. And so in kind of bringing the young and convincing the young that, yeah, you actually do really care about this like thing that you can only find on our little island, they were able to kind of convince, you know, the more adults, like older people and the older generation that, yeah, you might actually want to get rid of these cats and these rodents because they're having a huge impact on these native species. And I thought that was a really like good thing.
Interesting, thank you. Yes.
So just from the perspective of an ornithologist, because in the UK, it was interesting you said about the BirdLife partners, the RSPB in the UK would never publicly support anything like that. It's too dangerous for them, for their membership. But even though we have quite a large sort of birding community, who are obviously aware of species and things, because birds move around so much and naturally migrate and also have natural range expansion with climate change, etc., there's an awful lot of confusion between what counts as an invasive species that is causing problems and something that naturally it's a vagrant or it's turned up just for half of the year, and they want to have a long list of species. So they think the more foreign birds that come, the better. So it's a very difficult sort of, it's communication and awareness of making that clear, the distinction.
Hi. Yeah, I mentioned the issue before in the Netherlands. It's a huge issue, the resistance against the killing of the animals. Communication is very important, and the communication has to be clear. It has to be absolutely clear why it is necessary to take actions against animals. But you can communicate what you want. Some people are just convinced that human intervention in nature is wrong and that killing of animals is wrong. And you can communicate whatever you want, you will never convince them. We have to deal with that. We have to find a way, to find solutions to get an answer to that. Sometimes naive answers come like, well, maybe we could catch all the, for instance, the raccoons and the raccoon dogs. Maybe we can catch them and then put them in cages for the rest of their lives. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of them in Germany coming to the Netherlands, so we will never be able to do that. And often these people are just convinced that, well, then Let them come, let them become part of nature. It's a very difficult issue. Communication is important, but we will never be able to convince everyone.
Giovanni from Italy, University of Basilicata. I agree, communication is important, but it's important research and new knowledge about animals, also about plants. I know plants have no nervous system, so it's not a big issue. But in Italy, for instance, we have the problem of wild boars, very invasive in Italy, not in Europe probably. But you know, killing is not a good solution. Genetic selection of hunting will produce an opposite effect. Just the animals very strong will survive and will have more fitness. So for animals, probably we need more research, more case studies, and for instance, fertilization reduction, hormone treatments, and the wise use of food traps will be more useful, and we can also involve the people having emotions on this issue, because biodiversity is the first, the first goal that we have to target, and humans also needs to be biodiverse. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are just on time. Oh, Bram, do you want to add a last? Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, my name again is Bram Dont. I work for the Agency for Nature and Forests, and people from Flanders know that this is exactly what we are suffering a lot with this very moment. So the situation has even become so bad that for our agency has almost become a synonym of animal culling and tree cutting. Now, we do have support from stakeholders, but the true problem is that new groups emerge very often through social media, which have a real fundamental distrust of what governments do and have very opposing views on nature, as we do. Because what is nature? Yeah, we know the legal definition, we know the biological reality, but for other people, it's often very, very different. And then again, yeah, we can communicate as much as we want. We will very often keep on having that challenge. And what really makes a difference to us as a government is that support from stakeholders, but also from academia, for instance. Universities often keep very silent in these societal matters. But if they intervene with their views, that's, for us, that's a relief, because if the story always comes from the government side, it will always have this barrier of distrust. So this is a warm call for getting involved from your side into the story, so that people will become convinced eventually and will become educated eventually.
Thanks a lot. We are just on time, so I think we will end with this warm call. Keep it as a take-home message, maybe, for the discussion. I would like to thank a lot DJ, who helped me yesterday when building this group discussion, and I would like to thank you all for the valuable input that you provided this morning. So we have an hour now for the lunch, so it's just in the atrium. Thanks a lot for all the speakers this morning to be on time, and thank you.